Hello, everyone.
Oh, good.
Here I am. Okay, good. Yeah, thank you, Rhonda, for your help getting this together. And thanks, everyone, like Rhonda said, for bearing with us here to, yeah, change up the scope of this a little bit with a Zoom. I wanted to go over some of the basics here. We will have everyone muted throughout the class. Like Rhonda said, you will have your cameras on so that the board can monitor participation, but we'll have everybody muted. But we do want to encourage participation. So use that chat box on the bottom of your screen, and you can type a message either to everyone if you think it's maybe applicable, something you just want to put out into the world that someone else might be able to help answer, or you can go ahead and go into that chat box and just send something directly to me. So I have my name here as BR Water Forum Heather Barber. So go ahead and just use that chat box feature so that you can ask questions during any of the presentations today, and I'll just be keeping an eye on the little chat box, and I might hold some of the questions until the end, or if it seems really pertinent, I can interrupt the speaker and get those questions answered sooner rather than later. So that's the chat box feature. Yeah, we are recording this, so hope that's all right with everyone. We talked with the board about that. It's just, we think it'll be a good resource for people who maybe weren't able to join us today, just to have on the website. And yeah, again, so thank you for being here today. I'm Heather Barber with the Bitterroot Water Forum. And for those of you who don't know us, we are the Bitterroot Valley's local watershed group. So we do both on the ground restoration and watershed education. So we are all about helping to protect, restore, and enhance the water resources in and around the Bitterroot Valley, because I think, like a lot of you, we understand that water is the lifeblood of this community, and we're all in this together when it comes to how we steward, shepherd, and care for these resources. So the Water Forum is here for that, and we like to call ourselves the group for all users. So we're not just about fish and outfitting, or farms and ranches, or birds and wildlife. It's everything and everyone in between. So that's why we like to engage in classes like this, where we have opportunities to connect people to resources that we think might be really useful for them. So we'll have speakers today. Kathleen Schubert from DNRC. Kathy is here with us. So she'll be getting into more of the nitty gritty about water rights and all that jazz, because the Water Forum we don't do a whole lot with that. We just connect people to the right information when it comes to water rights. And then we'll have John Crowley from the Bitterroot Irrigation District, and Rhonda King from the Daily Ditches. So our role we see is just connecting people to the right information. So you realtors serve such an important function here in the Valley. You are often the very first point of contact to so many people moving here. And a lot of people, I mean, myself included, didn't have the privilege of growing up here in the Bitterroot Valley. So there's kind of a steep learning curve for those who are coming here from out of the area, from out of state, out of the region. A lot of people not from the West who are unfamiliar with irrigation systems and how we move water through the West. I'm sure you all get a lot of inquiries about people who see that lovely little stream running through their property, just to find, it's really an irrigation ditch. And so it might be a lovely water feature, but that doesn't mean that they, necessarily have access to it. And so just a lot of sort of confusion and misinformation we see when it comes to ditches, streams, water moving through here. So you have just such a great opportunity when talking to clients to give them that sort of introduction to this place and help them get acclimated and begin to understand how things actually work around here, which is just really fantastic. So thank you for doing that. And if you ever need resources, assistance from the Water Forum, we'd be happy to provide anything we can. So if you have some folks who have questions, who seem really curious about how water works here, especially, if they have a streamside property running, they have a stream running through their property, we would be happy to chat with them, connect them with resources when it comes to how to take care of that streamside property. I think we've probably seen a lot of people who love streamside properties to death. That can be another tricky thing, or really want that killer view of the stream from their kitchen, but also really love wildlife. And so those conversations about, well, if you really love wildlife and streams, you're probably going to want to leave all that vegetation there because it helps the fish and the fishery and the habitat for wildlife around the property. But anyways, getting a little ahead of myself there, but we do have resources available for you, for your clients, in our office and on our website. And we've also actually started doing mailings to streamside property owners. So working through cadastral and title services, and when properties change hands, we've been trying to do some direct mailing to folks after they close on streamside properties, just to let them know about stream health and about the Bitterroot Conservation District, and some of the different resources that they might want to tap into or need to utilize if and when they want to do any work around their streamside property. So we're here kind of as a liaison. I always say, if we don't have the answers, we can at least help you find them. So it's not always going to be us who have the final word in any of it, but I assure you we'll be happy to help connect you with folks who can. So with that, just wanted to walk you through some of the resources that are available to you right now on the web from this class. So let me see if I can share the screen here. Okay, and so if you go on to the Water Forum's website, so it's brwaterforum.org. Show you the home screen here. So here we are. It's our web. You can learn more about who we are, who's on our staff and board, where we work. So we have some maps about the watershed. We also have a project-specific page that will show you where we've done work throughout the valley. So from Miller Creek to the East Fork, we have worked with landowners and on public property, so from parks to the Forest Service throughout the entire basin. So you can click around here and learn a little bit more about the different types of projects that we've done and who we've worked with and what kinds of on-the-ground restoration we're doing to help protect the watershed. So that's just a little overview of our website and what's here. You can find resources. We do a monthly column in the paper in the Valley Republic Watershed Wellness, and so that's a great tool for folks just looking to learn a little bit more about what's happening around the watershed, get a little more information, get more acclimated. So especially for new clients, people who are newer to the Bitterroot Valley, it's kind of a neat introduction, just a little bit more about water resources. So you can click through those here. All of our watershed wellness articles are posted here online about different projects ranging from snowpack to restoration. We also have a Did You Know video series, and so this is nice. A lot of people are visual learners, and so there are videos here that you can watch or direct people to. We have a YouTube channel with a lot of different information ranging from, so we talk about irrigation in the Bitterroot, when the river was really hot and we had to go into those hoot owl restrictions. So what does that mean for the river? Snowpack, groundwater, you name it. How can I be a good neighbor to a stream? This is a nice one from a streamside landowner talking about some of the blessings and curses that come with that streamside property ownership. So just a lot of different resources here for, depending on what your interest is or what your client's interests are, just a neat way to learn more about our watershed.
Heather, can I interrupt you for just 1 minute?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, I'm sorry. we need to make sure that everyone has their cameras on, so that if you're taking the class for credit, make sure that your camera's on and that your full name is at the bottom of the screen. Okay, thank you. I'm done now.
Yeah, no, good reminder. Thank you for that. Yeah, please feel free to interject anytime for those reminders. Okay, and so let's see for today's class. So if you go on our website, so just you can see this from any page on the website. You scroll over to what's happening. So this is just links to different sort of timely information. So right here, there's an irrigation, oh, I'm sorry, info for realtors. So again, just on the front page under what's happening, info for realtors. So that will take you right to this resource page that we made just for all of you. And so Kathy from DNRC included a few pieces here. So a great resource list here from DNRC about water rights information. So I'm sure you all have navigated that more times than you'd like to count. And we all know some websites aren't as efficient as others. So this kind of helps walk you through where you can find some of the different information, both from DNRC on cadastral, from the Bureau of Mines and Geology, from their Logwell website. So just a lot of really great resources and links here, all kind of a one-stop shop on this page here. There's also a little pamphlet from DNRC about navigating adjudication. So this just gets into a few more of those details, what DNRC's role is, how to begin to wrap your mind around the adjudication process. So that might be useful for some of you, or certainly for some of your clients. And this is a nice resource here, the how to transfer Corvallis Canal water shares. This was provided by Maggie Weber over at their Corvallis Canal, because everyone sort of has a different process for how water rights transfers work. And so she wanted to have this available to all of you as you assist anyone who might be on the Corvallis Canal. This is the information that they use and that they need to be able to transfer those water rights shares. So it's a little bit unique how they do things, but you can access that on the web. And then something else, if you want to dive a little deeper or recommend to someone else who might be curious, annually we host a tour of irrigation in the Bitterroot. And this year we did it virtually, this year and last year. So now it's available on the web in a really easy to use format. So for those of you looking for more information on irrigation in the Bitterroot, you can go here and it's a little story map. So you just kind of scroll through. You can pick which piece you're interested in and jump right there, or just go ahead and scroll through the website. So a nice little video from John Crowley over at the Bitterroot Irrigation District about how BRID shares work, different water resource information, yeah, learning more about Lake Como and how it's not just there for recreation, but for irrigation. The next is Rhonda from Daily Ditches, talking about how their irrigation district works, and some little more information about the ditch. There's a fish screen on that ditch, kind of talking a little bit more about that. And then Leslie Nice from Fish, Wildlife and Parks, getting into how fish screens can prevent loss of fish through irrigation ditches. And then a fun one from Alan Mackey, water user out on a family ranch in Corvallis. And so he gets into more of the nitty gritty. So the other videos are on water delivery and fish, and Alan gets into how water is actually used and applied on the ground. So again, especially for people moving here from elsewhere, this would be just a really neat resource to get people connected to how a rancher uses water. And hearing, if anybody knows Alan Mackey, just a great guy, really interesting speaker. It's, it's a video on irrigation, so I can't promise it's going to be the most thrilling thing you've ever seen, but the information is outstanding. And it really is, he's just a down-to-earth guy who gives a great description of how it works. So it makes it really kind of tangible for folks. So yeah, maybe not not a get out the popcorn and watch this video kind of deal, but really good information in there from all of the speakers for those who are interested in learning more. So that's how you move through our website there. Okay, so with that, unless there's any questions from me right away about the water forum or anything about the class today, we'll look in the chat box there. And I think we did most of the housekeeping. There will be a couple of different breaks here, so you will have time to turn that camera off, or don't forget to turn it back on, but to take a little break, stretch your legs. Will be about 1:50 and about 3 o'clock are the time for our breaks today. And okay, it looks like some people still missing video. And just a reminder here from Naomi, get those videos turned on. Class credit can't be awarded if videos can't be monitored. So it looks like we're close to the line where there might not be any more reminders. It's kind of last chance to get those cameras turned on. Make sure you can get the credit for the course today. And with that, I will hand it over to Kathy Schubert from DNRC, and she will lead us through most of the next segments there. So I will just see you in the chat box. So thanks, everyone.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Kathy Schubert from DNRC. I worked for DNRC for 17, 18 years now as a water resource specialist. And I'm going to take you through some basic things on water rights. I'll tell you right up front, water rights are not black and white. There's not a yes and no kind of answer to any of the questions, but we'll try to get you as much information as we can. And I'm going to share my screen so we can do a PowerPoint here. Oops, if I can figure out how to do it. This is all new to me too here. Okay. Okay, can everybody see the? Can everybody see the screen, the first slide?
It's up, Kathy.
Because I can't see you.
Yep, you're sharing. Thank you.
And so it's the total, it's not little tiny pictures. It's like one big screen, right?
One full screenshot. Yep.
Perfect. Because I've got 2 or 3 monitors going here. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go through demystifying water rights. So I'm trying to get this going. Oh boy, we have some lag time here. Hang on. Uh-oh, it's not flipping through my slides. Oh. Hang on. Technical difficulties here. Oh my gosh, why can I not? It's flipping on one screen, but not the other. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. This is all new to me. I'm trying to make it work here. Okay, so can everybody see that screen? Water rights basics?
Yes.
Okay. So just a little bit of history. We'll go into a little bit of history and some background on water rights, but pursuant, Article 9 of the Montana Constitution, the legislature declares that any use of water is a public use, and that the waters within the state are the property of the state for the use of its people and are subject to appropriation for beneficial use. And Water Resource Division promotes and coordinates the beneficial use, the conservation, protection, and development of the Montana's water resources for the present and the future generations. In 1973, the Montana Water Use Act was passed, and it became effective on July 1 of 1973. And that's an important date when you get into adjudication and statements of claims. But the Water Use Act, made it so that it's administered by the Water Resource Division, hence DNRC being created. And it developed an adjudicatory process for the pre-1973 water rights. And it developed a water right permitting system for the post-July 1, 1973 water rights. And we'll get into a little bit later more about the pre and post water rights, 73 water rights. And it developed a system for changing a water right, and it created a central water rights record system. The water rights, they are property rights, and they're protected by the Montana Constitution. They can be bought and sold. They have value, and DNRC does not get into, what the cost would be or what the value of water rights are, but they can be bought and sold, and they cannot be taken away without due process. And some of the elements of a water right, their priority date, and that's the date that they were established, and the source, period of diversion, period of use, place of use, a purpose, the flow rate, and the volume. And according to, Montana water law, Montana's is a state that is a doctrine of prior appropriation, which means first in time, first in right. It's also known as the Western water law versus, riparian. And back in the day, that first in time, first in right was used to accommodate mostly at that time irrigation and mining needs. And water rights are limited to a beneficial use, which means there's no waste. You can't just apply for a water right just to see it go down the creek. And there's no reserving water. And beneficial use includes agricultural use, stock, domestic, fish and wildlife, industrial, commercial, hydropower, irrigation, mining, in-stream flows, aquifer recharge, and marketing for mitigation. And there are no hierarchy of uses. And there's a saying, hang on here, let me get to this slide. My notes here. And so there's no hierarchy of uses, and it's either use it or lose it. And there's a 10-year, non-use period. And it's limited to the historic use. There's no expansion. If you have a statement of claim and it has a place of use for the 10 acres, it's like you cannot expand the use to 12 or 15 or whatnot. And the existing users have a right to the conditions that existed when they came on the source being a creek or river, stream. And according to the law, there's no adverse effect to other users. Oh boy, now I'm stuck again. Hang on here. This isn't working very well. So DNRC does not have jurisdiction over ditches or ditch rights. And ditch rights and water rights are separate property rights. A water right does not automatically convey a ditch right, and a ditch right doesn't automatically convey a water right. So they're two, separate things. And DNRC does not enforce pre-July 1, 1973 water rights or water rights located on a decreed stream. enforcement of disputes regarding the use of ditches, cleaning ditches, access to ditches, and location of the ditches. They all fall under the jurisdiction of the local county district court. And DNRC does not investigate complaints regarding groundwater certificates. And are we ready to go into some forms here, the different types of water rights and forms? And before we go into this section, does anybody have any questions on that section?
Kathy, the only question so far is one on use it or lose it, and how that applies. So if someone is not using a water right, who can enforce the use it or lose it? How does that work?
Okay, so what I have here in my notes is a water right can be lost if not used. And it's currently the department doesn't aggressively pursue abandonment of water rights due to our limited resources. But there is a process available for the department or a water user to declare a water right abandoned. Abandonment requires a minimum of 10 years of non-use and an intent, and that being the key word, an intent to abandon such water right by, like, say, removing a head gate or a ditch system. So the system to prove abandonment would have to go through the court system to do that. Does that kind of answer the question?
I think it does. I'll see if there's a follow-up, but I think that should do it.
Yeah, intent is the key word there. I've seen a lot of cases, or heard of a lot of cases going to court, to try to prove abandonment, but you have to be able to prove that just because the person didn't use the water for 20 years, that they intended to abandon that water right. And that's kind of always the little stickler in the court system, is trying to, prove that intent, that they really did, intend to abandon that. So.
Sure. So there is a follow-up question on that now. And so what if the intent was with the previous owner? What happens with the new owner?
Oh boy.
If someone challenges it after the property has changed ownership and there's an abandonment claim.
Well, if there's an abandonment claim, if they're going to court, usually it's during the time period, when there's non-use. So if the property changed hands and the new people start using the water, then therefore, the water's being used. So would it be considered abandoned?
And so could someone make a claim previously to say it was abandoned for 10 plus years and try to prove that to override a new property owner?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure if they went to court, they could try to prove it. I don't know how far they would get, but yeah, that's kind of getting in a legal realm of.
Sure.
I'm not really sure what would happen there.
Okay. And one new question, what if you have a water right, but no access to the water as it's on a different property?
Oh boy, I hate that question. It's a good question. But in the Bitterroot Valley, actually all throughout the state of Montana, there are hundreds of water rights where they cannot access the water. It's still considered a property right. It still legally belongs to the landowner. But if you can't access it, you have to deal basically with all your neighbors to kind of try to come up with, to establish an easement so that you could get to the ditch or the stream so that you could access that water. Because what historically has happened is that water right, say, used to cover 100 acres or 50 acres. Well, it was all owned by one rancher or one farmer, and he had access to those ditches and the creeks or streams. But as the land got subdivided up into, 1,000 little parcels, when they started subdividing, they never thought to give water right easements, across other people's lots so that everybody could access the water. So therefore, legally, you're part of the place of use and you have a portion of that water right, but you have no access. And there's really nothing you can do about it unless you talk to your neighbors and establish easements across their property. And then, you would have a easement access, to the source.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
That's it for now.
All right, so we'll go into some water right forms and types and forms. And the different types of water rights that we have is statements of claim, which is, a right to use the water that would be protected under the law as it existed prior to July 1 of 1973. There's that famous date again. So the claim filing period for statements of claim ended in 82 and then again in 1996, because we had we kind of like did an extension there. And so all statements of claim were supposed to be filed with the DNRC by 1996. And then we have what we call new appropriation is a type of water right, and that's water use originating after June 30th of 1973. And those are provisional permits, like the provisional permits would cover any surface water appropriations or groundwater use over 35 gallons a minute and or 10 acre feet of water. Now that 10 acre feet, that's a volume, it's a volume of water. And new appropriations also covers groundwater certificates, which groundwater use that doesn't exceed the 35 gallons a minute or the 10 acre feet. Those are commonly known as your 602 forms. Groundwater certificates are for, your domestic household wells. And then we have exempt notices, and they're kind of tricky, but exempt notices were for certain July 1, 1973 water uses for livestock and domestic use from in-stream or groundwater sources that were exempt from the filing of a statement of claim. So we'll go into some of this a little bit later, but basically what that means is during the claim filing period, up on top of the screen where it says statement of claim, when you were supposed to file a statement of claim for any water use by 1982, and then they extended it to 96. These types of uses under the exempt notice, they were exempt from filing that statement of claim. But then later on, House Bill 110 was passed, and they opened up I think it is a 2-year filing period, so that people that had these exempt notices, they could actually file, a statement of claim on that exempt water right. So they could turn the exempt water right into a statement of claim. If you didn't file a statement of claim during that time period, which House Bill 110 was in effect in 2017, and I think it ended in June 30th, 2019. So there was that 2-year period. If you didn't turn your exempt notices into the statement of claim, then your water right would be subordinate, which is junior in priority date to all other filed water rights. So, and some people previously, before House Bill 110, was passed, they filled out a form. It was called a 627 form. It was a notice, and I use the word notice of water right. And they filed that with the DNRC just so they could get notice of all other water right situations going on in their area, and they would be able to object to certain, water applications and whatnot. And the abstract of an exempt notice, you can see up there, it says exempt notice. It doesn't say water right, doesn't say statement of claim. It says exempt notice. And you can see that on this one, it has a date of 1968. Well, if they didn't turn this exempt notice into a statement of claim during that filing period between 2017 and 19, they are now, subordinate to all other, water rights on record. And you can also see on the bottom of that exempt notice, there's this exempt notice information, which explains right down here that filing the notice, oops, oh, shoot. Okay, sorry about that. So it says filing the notice and the acceptance by the DNRC did not constitute the establishment of or confirm the existence of a valid existing water right. So that claim filing period between 2017 and 2019 was a pretty important time period. And the DNRC did send out notices, I think, to every property owner in the state of Montana. So you can imagine how busy our phones were. But, and a lot of people did file a statement of claim on these exempt notices, but how many there were filed, I'm not real sure.
And Kathy, I'd like to stop and ask a question there before we move on. So someone asked, so if a water right is dated into the back, say into the 1800s, but the owner did not file to confirm the existence, is that water right not enforceable?
Right, they needed to file a statement of claim on that. You mean if they had an old recorded deed or document saying you get so many miners inches out of a creek, and it was a 1800s, time period, they had that time period to file on those with DNRC between the 82, the 82 and 96 time period, and they needed to get into DNRC and file on those. If you did not file, and now you're in a closed basin, you lost that water right. It's no longer it's not valid.
Okay. And going back to a previous slide for the exempt well question, if a well produces more than 35 gallons per minute, do you have to put something on the well to limit its production?
That's kind of a because the limits now are 35 gallons a minute up to 10 acre feet. And so in order for you to fall within the sideboards of that groundwater certificate, it's 35 gallons a minute and 10 acre feet. And yes, if your well produces more than that, you would only put the size of pump down that well that produces 35 gallons a minute or less. So yeah, you would have to restrict that well. If you go over the 35 gallons a minute, then you're into the permitting process. And the Bitterroot Valley is in a closed basin, so the permitting process for wells over 35 gallons a minute, it's pretty tough to get through the whole process on that one.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so here's the different types of forms that I was just, talking about. There's the Form 600, which is the provisional permit. And the provisional permit handles the groundwater applications. It's called Groundwater Application for Beneficial Use. And then we have another Form 600 that covers just surface water applications. But like I say, in the Bitterroot Valley, it's a closed basin. So right now you cannot apply for a provisional permit for surface water. Then we have the Form 606, which is to change an existing water right. You can change a statement of claim. And we have an irrigation application for, the change. And then we have a non-irrigation application. And then the 602 form, which is the notice of completion of groundwater development. And that's for the groundwater wells. Most of them are, for domestic use. That's the 35 and 10. And then we have the 608, which is the ownership update form. And we'll talk a little bit about that because we've got some changes to that form that just happened this year. And then we have the 641. It's an ownership update divided interest. You can take a water right and actually, divide it. And so there would be a parent water right divided into separate, we call them child water rights, if that's an agreement but between the owners. And then the 642 exempts or severs a water right. So when a person can sell a property and they can retain the water right that used to go to that property and sell it to a new person and on the face of their deed or whatnot, and they have to fill out that 641 form with DNRC that says that the seller is retaining ownership of that water right, and therefore we're exempting or we're severing it from the land. Is there any questions on any of those forms?
I don't have a question update on the forms, but I do kind of following up on the filing. So if you are the new owner of a water right, do you have a way to know if the water right was filed other than the general abstract? And will the date on the current general abstract reflect that?
What do you mean by know if the water right was filed? If
I
there's
think the question is, the first question was, if you had a water right from say the 1800s and no one filed on it and that water right has been lost. Now, let's say you're a new owner and you're handed this piece of paper that says that there's a previous water right. How would you know whether or not the right was filed?
Well, you would know because in most of the, and now we're getting into a lot of the adjudication stuff, which I am not in the adjudication department, but most of those old 1800 water rights were in a decree and were filed with the county clerk and recorder. And most of those decrees covered at that time, because they're back in the early 1900s, most of those decrees covered huge, large quantities of land. So those decrees had numbers. Let's just say it has number 1, 2, 3. So as people started filing, because the land had been subdivided since the 18 and 1900s, when they filed, they would file for their portion of that decree 1, 2, 3. So there's a way to find out whether all of that decree was actually filed on, or if there was a portion of it that was lost. And that is one of the reasons DNRC, wanted everybody, well, actually the state wanted everybody to, file those statements of claims, is so that we could kind of keep an accounting as to, if the decree said there was X amount of water, was it all filed on or was it not? Or what portion was and what portion wasn't? And that's part of the accounting system that we keep track of.
Okay. Thank you. And one other question came in. If an owner retains a water right separate from a property, how can this be used on another property?
Good question. They have to go through the change process, and that would be Form 606. So someone can retain that water right and put it in their back pocket for, future, opportunities or uses or whatnot. But in order to use that on a different piece of property, or to sell that to somebody else or have their neighbor use it, they would have to go through the change process to change the place of use and sometimes change the point of diversion. But yeah, you could take that water right and go through the change process and change it to a whole new piece of property and whatnot if you wanted to sell it. A lot of times people are severing the water rights and holding on to them so that they can sell them for mitigation water, because in a closed basin, if a person wanted to get a big well that was producing over 35 gallons a minute, say, 100 gallons a minute, they have to mitigate for their net depletions to the Bitterroot River. So they need to buy water from somebody, and that whoever they're buying that water right from or that water from, they have to retire that water right to compensate for what they're taking out of the Bitterroot.
Great.
Okay. So one of the forms, most of these forms here have stayed the same for a while, but the ownership update form just had some recent legislative changes on it. And the biggest change on an ownership update, and for people that don't know, ownership update is when you sell a piece of property and the water rights have to transfer to the new buyer. You'll see highlighted in yellow there, that's the change is now in order to transfer water rights, you have to attach a copy of the recorded deeds or other documents of conveyance showing the transfer of the property and the water rights from the DNRC record owner to the current owner. And so basically you have to attach a deed, but in some cases you're going to have to attach a full chain of conveyance from the DNRC record owner to the current owner or the new owner. And if they're not attached, we cannot process the ownership update. So basically what that's saying is most ownership updates, we're going to need a copy of the deed. But what we need to look at now and what you need to be aware of as a realtor, because people that don't follow this rule are going to be getting deficiency letters. And the first person they're going to call is you saying, hey, I need a chain of conveyance. If the person listed on the water right is not the seller because of the fact that nobody ever did say they didn't do ownership updates for 2 property transactions back, you're going to need a chain of conveyance from who's ever listed on the water right to the person that's selling the property. Sometimes that may be 1 deed, sometimes that may be 3 or 4 deeds. But when this happens and DNRC gets this paperwork in and we're missing that, full chain of conveyance, we'll be sending out a deficiency letter to the buyer. And then of course the buyer, saying that we can't process this ownership update. And then, I'm assuming the buyers, they either have to go down to the clerk and recorder's office and do this, get a chain of title themselves and make copies of all the deeds, or they're going to be calling their realtor. So that's the big change on the ownership updates now. So does anybody have any questions on that?
Doesn't look like it yet. I'll let you know if anything comes in.
Okay. All right. So, and then as I mentioned, the slide, please. Okay. So I know this map is hard to read and probably hard to see, but it is on our website, which I'll, get into a little bit later in the day. But this kind of shows the statewide basin closures and controlled groundwater areas and how important water really is, because there's a shortage, and you can see how many different areas are actually closed right now. And so yeah, water's pretty important, and we need to do everything we can to protect it.
Kathy, quick question about the previous statement about some of those changes. Question is, have the title companies been advised of the change since they do a lot of the transfer paperwork?
Most of the title companies in our area that we see, that handle the ownership updates, we have sent them out a letter, and so they, I can't say that all of them have been notified, but a lot of them have been notified of the change. Now, here's the kicker. A lot of people think it's the title company's responsibility to fill out this ownership update and to get all this, chain of conveyance, the copies of the deeds and whatnot, and hand them into DNRC. It is not. It is not their responsibility. They're doing that as maybe a service. I don't know, but it is not their responsibility. It is the buyer's responsibility to fill out this form, attach the fee, and make copies of all the deeds. So some of the title companies actually do fill out the ownership updates at closing and whatnot, and some of them don't. Some of them will tell the new buyer that they have to do that themselves, and therefore the buyer may want the realtor's help on that.
Great. And a semi-related question. What if the title to the property does not match the chain of conveyance because someone has transferred or sold their water right to someone other than the property owner on record?
Whoa, wait a minute. Run that one by me again.
Okay. What if the title to the property does not match the chain of conveyance because someone has transferred or sold their water right to someone other than the property owner of record?
Well, when you sell your water right, you're going to do an ownership update. And when you sell that water right, there's going to be a recorded document saying, Mr. Smith sold water right number XYZ to Mr. Jones, and that's going to be recorded. So there is a paper trail. Whether it's a paper trail on the water right or a paper trail on the actual property.
Okay, and in regard to title company's responsibility, what if the buy-sell agreement calls it out as the responsibility of the title company? Then is the responsibility on the title company?
As far as the state law goes, for water rights, I think, it says in state statute that it's the buyer. But if they have that in the buy-sell agreement, that's, I don't know who's, bounded by that. If the title company and, the buyer and seller are bound by that buy-sell agreement, then yeah, it would make the title company responsible for it. But the state statute says it's the buyer's responsibility to transfer the water rights.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good.
Yep.
Now we're going to get into some other kind of restrictions that we have on lots, what's called combined appropriation. And basically what we're talking about here is combined appropriation on wells. And these are wells mostly restricted to the 35 gallons a minute and the 10 acre feet of volume. And so the combined appropriation was introduced into law, but it wasn't defined in 1987. And at that time, look, the appropriations were less than 100 gallons a minute for wells. It's like, woo. But then in 1991, the legislature changed that and made it 35 gallons a minute. So that's where the 35 and the 10 acre feet comes from, is that legislature, restricted those wells in 1991. Then in 2013, SB 19 was passed defining combined appropriation as an appropriation of water from the same source aquifer by two or more wells or developed springs that are physically connected into the same system. So that would be two wells, what we call manifolded together or piped together. And that was vetoed by the governor, and the rulemaking went to DNRC. There's a little history lesson here. And so then in October 2014, Clark Fork Coalition concluded that the department's ruling was inconsistent with the applicable law and therefore invalid. So then DNRC's 1987 rule was reinstated, And the order took in effect of 11/21 of 2014, which basically states that the groundwater developments do not have to be physically connected, nor have a common distribution system to be considered a combined appropriation. So here's a confusing flow chart for you. So basically what happens now, after they figured out what rule we're going to follow, for all subdivisions that were submitted to DEQ after 10/17 of 2014, if it went to DEQ review, and that's a yes, then we use the 1987 rule, which means the total volume from all the wells cannot exceed 10 acre feet unless they're 1,320 feet apart, which is a quarter mile apart. And in a minute, I'll show you some examples. This gets confusing, but if your subdivision went through DEQ, I mean, if it didn't go through DEQ, this is for all the older ones, the older subdivisions out there. If your parcel is greater than 20 acres, it goes by the 1987 rule, which is the same thing. All of your wells together can't go over 10 acre feet unless you're a quarter mile apart. Then if your property is less than 20 acres, then it goes by this rule, which is the 1993 rule, which says individual and manifolded wells cannot exceed 10 acre feet, and individual wells cannot exceed 35 gallons a minute. And I know this is confusing, but it's something that you just need to be aware of when you're out there selling property, that sometimes there may be, and for lack of better words, this probably isn't the appropriate thing to say, but there's water restrictions on some of these lots that have been subdivided after 2014. And you need to be aware of some of these water restrictions, and they're really not posted anywhere, which is unfortunate. But you can find this information out on a subdivision that was approved after 2014. You can find that out through DEQ. DEQ has that information, but DNRC also has that information. So one of those two sources you could call, and we could tell you whether there's water restrictions on that lot. And pictures are always, to me, worth a million words. So here we go with all this confusing combined appropriations. Let's just take this top 20 acre lot up here. This parcel already has a 6.5 acre foot water right, and they have a 3.5 acre feet water right. Well, if you add the 6.5 and the 3.5 together, you get 10. So this lot right here is maxed out unless he can get 320 feet away. So if you were selling this property and somebody said, oh, hey, I want to put a barn back here and another well in, you need to, either call DNRC and find out about the restrictions, because he's restricted to that 1,320 feet away. And just to give you an idea, that purple circle is 1,320 feet away. So there's no way he could get another well on that lot. So it's just something that, the new buyer would need to be aware of there. Any questions yet?
Yeah, so I think regarding that, you said people need to be aware of it. The question is, who monitors the wells and water usage?
Well, we issue the water rights for them. But yeah, we don't really have any kind of enforcement, or part of our agency doesn't go out and we don't monitor the amounts, the amount of water that's coming out of each individual domestic well. There's no way we could do that, and there's no meters on them. But believe me, if you went to overuse your water, your neighbors are going to squeal on you, because we hear about that all the time. And any other questions before I go to the next slide?
Okay, it says, to clarify from before, line 261 states that documents will be prepared for transfer by blank. And this is just customary to add. Okay, I think this is a side conversation, which is good. The folks are having in the chat box just about how to clarify who is responsible for the transferring, how to include the title company, even if it's not legally their right. I think they're just clarifying sort of how to potentially engage the title company.
Oh, perfect. Good. Okay, so the next slide on combined appropriation, let's take this 10-acre parcel. And the purple, this would be the whole project. It's a 10-acre parcel, and say the person, he wants to subdivide and chunk up these 4 lots down here, and they're 1-acre lots. Under the new, the new combined appropriation, each lot can have their own well, hence the green dots. Sorry for my bad drawings, but each lot can have their own well, but this whole project is limited to the 10 acre feet of the volume of water. So the restriction on this may be, it could be a number of different combinations, but it could be that each parcel gets 1 acre feet of water, leaving 6 acre feet of water for the remaining 6 acre parcel. And those are the kinds of restrictions that when somebody is going to buy one of these lots, they come into DNRC, they say, I drilled my well, and they apply for their, water. They're, if they don't know about it, they're going to find out about it real quick. And sometimes, they could be a little perturbed when they find out that they're restricted on the amount of water that they can use. So, and like I say, if this is a subdivision that went through after the, 2014, after that date, October in 2014, you can call DNRC or DEQ to find out whether there are, what the water limits are on each one of those parcels, so that, the buyer is aware and they know what they can and can't use before they come through DNRC door and then totally explode when they find out they can't use 10 acre feet of water. They can only use 1. And then, keep in mind, like situation like this, each, there's 20 lots in this subdivision. So all 20 of these lots are necked down to 10 acre feet, a combined total of the 10 acre feet. So if you take 10 acre feet of water divided by the 20 lots, that means each one of these lots gets a ½ acre of water per lot. And just to kind of put that into perspective, DNRC standard is 1 acre foot for domestic use, and DEQ and the EPA say a standard family uses 0.33 acre feet. So you can see DNRC is a little bit more generous on their water standard, but you're getting 0.5. They're restricted to 0.5. So if they have 0.33 just for their house, that doesn't leave much for lawn and garden on these lots. And there are subdivisions out there that are under these water restrictions, and they're just getting enough just for household use, and lawn and garden watering is completely, prohibited in some of those subdivisions. And that's something else that people, should know if they're buying one of these lots, if they're in one of those types of subdivision. It's like, okay, you can, use the water inside the house, but you can't do any, watering out on lawn and garden, because there's just, there's just not enough water. We doing okay in questions?
Yeah, a couple came up. And I think this is just clarification from what you've said, but so just understanding that if a client wants to build a shop on an existing parcel with a home and a well, they would need to check with DNRC to make sure that they could dig another well on the property.
I would highly suggest it.
Great. And do you think that the well drillers are aware that they might be putting in illegal wells under this law?
That I'm not sure of. Some of the drillers, are aware of the combined appropriation, and they'll tell people when somebody calls them and says, hey, can you drill another well? The first thing that the driller will say is, you better call DNRC first to, make sure, that everything is okay and you're, within the limits. Some of them, yeah, I don't think they know, or I address it. I'm just not sure if all of them know or not.
Thank you.
And just visuals again, because I like visuals, but people say, well, what's the big deal? It's just a groundwater well. It's just, for household use. But, groundwater is a big deal and surface water is a big deal. But our groundwater, kind of replenishes, like you can see in these pictures, it replenishes our streams and our creeks. So, it is an important, it is an important deal here. And what's happening? Oh, yeah, and another visual, and this slide is old, but I just always like this slide. This is like a drainage basin right around the Florence area. Can you see that white line all the way around the drainage? That means like all the water up high just, of course, drains down to the lowest point, into the river here. Look how many wells are there. Unbelievable. At this time, there's like 4,375 wells. And like I say, this slide is old. I'm sure that there's a lot more wells in that area now than there were when this slide was made. And then here's Hamilton. And of course, the white line, that's kind of like the edge of what we call a drainage basin, where everything from that white line drains down to, like, say, a middle point, just like a bathtub would. Boom, look at all those wells. So it's kind of interesting.
Question for you, Kathy.
Mhm.
What if a property is so old that there are irrigation rights off the ditch, but nothing filed on the well?
They're property owners more than welcome to, if the well is, producing the 35 gallons a minute, and they're going to use 10 acre feet of volume or less, they're more than welcome at any time to file that 602 form, that notice of groundwater completion. And their priority date for that notice of completion is going to be, when they file it, when DNRC receives it. So, it could be October of 2021, even though the well was drilled in, say, 1954. The priority date on that water right is going to be 2021. But they can file. They can file on it.
Okay.
Any other questions? I kind of finished early here.
Let's see. How do you think the priority right comes into play with a well?
You mean, like, what does the priority date mean on a well? Kind of, is that?
I think that, yes. Yep.
Okay, so the priority dates are on on the water right on a well. Is the priority date is the day that DNRC received the application, and that establishes the priority date. And remember, back in the beginning of the slides, we said first in time, first in right. Well, that applies to wells also. So if you have a priority date on your well, that's in 1970, and and that's what's on your water right. And then all of a sudden time goes on and they keep developing and more and more and more. And all of a sudden the newer wells in 2001, if the well drilled in 2001 is affecting the older wells, it's kind of like, okay, the older ones, I was here first. So the 2021 guy, he's got to figure out a way to not adversely affect the other wells in the area. And that's why priority is important. And when you go, remember the other side we said about disputes, when you go to district court, you have to have a water right on that well with a priority date to even have any kind of standing. If you don't have a water right, then, you don't have any standing to try to tell the guy in 2001 that drilled the well, hey, you're affecting my well. You got to do something different.
Okay, we had another question come in. So if someone wants to build a new property on a piece of private land, and there's no water right associated with the property, are they still able to build a well if it's less than 35 gallons per minute?
Yeah. As long as, they're not in a restricted groundwater area or anything like that. But yeah, if it's just a bare piece of land and they want to drill a well and, build a house and whatnot, after they put that well to use, then they could apply for a water right on that well, as long as it's 35 gallons a minute or less, and they're going to use 10 acre feet of water or less. And in some counties, they have, up in Missoula, you have to apply for like a little permit before you drill the well. And it used to be like $10 or something, but you had to kind of be approved before you even drilled. Ravalli County used to have that restriction, but I don't think that they do anymore. But you would just have to, check with your county, or if you're in city limits or whatnot, if it's okay with their planning board or their sanitarian board, then, like I say, after you drill the well and put it to use, then you could come to DNRC and apply for the water right for that well.
And you had mentioned restricted groundwater areas in that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I have, let's see, I had a slide. There's certain areas. Okay. There's certain areas, like what they're called controlled groundwater areas, and Hayes Creek is one of them. I'm not sure. Let me see if I can get back to this. Yeah, okay, this closure map. Bitterroot Valley Sanitary Landfill, but I think they're getting ready to lift that restriction. There's Larson Creek, there's Hayes Creek. And basically what it is the owners and water users in that area, they applied for a closure area because there's a shortage of water. So like in Hayes Creek, they designated a certain drainage area where water is really scarce. So they were basically saying, hey, we already have enough wells, we're having issues here, and we don't want any more drilled. And if they are drilled, then there's a whole bunch of rules and regulations they have to follow in order to drill a well within one of those controlled groundwater areas. And like the Bitterroot Valley sanitary landfill, that was due to contamination. So if you wanted to drill a well in that area, you have to go a certain depth, and the well has to be constructed in a certain way. So so each controlled groundwater area has a little bit different rules and regulations, and those rules can be found on our website too, under the closure, under the closure areas.
Thank you. Rye Creek in the Bitterroot is also one of those areas.
Yeah. And basically, like I say, people file for those when they just, they run into trouble, but there's just not enough water in their area, and they don't want it developed, to the point where everybody's out of water. They want to protect what they have, and And so that's why they create those controlled groundwater areas. And there's a lot of paperwork and things to go through to create one of those. And I don't even know how you would start, but.
Okay, because a question just came in. How would someone go about creating a controlled groundwater area if there seemed to be if there seemed to be a lack of water in a neighborhood?
Yeah, they, if they wanted to do that, they could call the office and we can refer them. I believe it would be the department up in Helena that would probably, start investigating and looking into how you would create that controlled groundwater area. But a lot of hydrologists get involved. Studies have to be done. Paperwork has to be done. But how that whole procedure is, I'm just not really sure on that. But we could get who's ever interested, they can call the office and we can kind of forward them and get them in touch with the people who would know that process.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from folks before we take a short break here? Okay, the question is, are you saying that no new wells can be dug in the Rye Creek area without going through the lengthy review process?
Well, the Rye Creek, I would have to look up the restrictions on the Rye Creek. I'm just not sure on Rye Creek. What the restrictions would be, but it's on. It would be on our website to tell you what you can and can't do in that area, because they have the restrictions or the procedures in each closure area. And I'm just not really up on Rye Creek. I would have to look online and read about Rye Creek. And when we come back from the break and stuff, and we go into, our website and stuff, we could go to the closure area and see what we can find on that.
Yeah, and I can say that just looking it up quickly online, so Rye Creek is what they call a designated stream depletion zone. And so that is a certain type of designation within a closed basin that limits the amount of water used under the exceptions to permit requirements. Goes into Montana Code annotated, but this is due to the availability of water and protection of existing water rights. So it says that for any municipality, a petition can be filed to help protect water rights. So this is on the DNRC's website. So if you Google Rye Creek stream depletion zone, it'll give you a little bit more information on that. Okay, well, a couple comments here. Thank you, Kathy, for the visuals. This is really informative and helpful. And someone said, are we going to be able to access this recording later? And the answer is yes. We are recording this, so the Bitterroot Water Forum will add this to that tab of info for realtors on our website. So we'll walk you through that again before you all take off today. I'll show you again where to find that on our website. And with that, we will take a little break here, and we'll be back to our screens at 2:05 to get more into real estate and water rights. So now, post break, just want to remind everyone to get those screens turned back on in case you turn those off during break. Turn the cameras back on for participation credits there. And just want to say thank you so far for everyone for bearing with us as we figure out this Zoom format here. It seems to be going pretty well. Monitoring the chats, whether you're direct messaging me or putting it out to everyone. Just a reminder, if you do put your question out to everyone, I think the question itself will be recorded via the recording. So we'll have be able to track on those. Also, when we do post this recording, we'll tighten up, we'll take the breaks out, and we'll try to put some teasers about time, sort of when we do, for you to kind of dive back into the video to sort of find some of the information that you need. So thank you, everyone. And with that, I will turn it back over to Kathy for part 2.
Okay. Let's see if we can do this again. Screen sharing. Oops. Okay. Can we see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So hang on here. Let me get one more thing up on my other screen. Okay. So in this section, I just kind of we touched base on like some of the issues that we hear coming through the office and some of the issues that you deal with. As you can see from this list, I mean, we talked about ownership updates, you know, and the new rule now with, you know, attaching all the deeds and maybe a big chain of conveyance in some cases where they're not going to get processed. And we talked a little bit about the water rights severances or splits, you know, and I just kind of want to mention that when you do sever a water right, as you see there, it says that to sever a water right, it has to be stated in a recorded document. So if your seller wants to keep that water and does not want to give it to the new buyer, it has to say that in the deed, on the face of the deed. Or it could be a whole separate document pertaining to water rights, but it has to be in a recorded document. We talked a little bit about exempt filings. Exempt filings, they had their chance to file statements of claim on them. If they didn't, now they're subordinate to all other water rights. And the DEQ water restrictions on that combined appropriation, we went through that. And you can, like I say, call DEQ to find information out on water restrictions on new lots. Or you can call DNRC. We usually have them mapped, and we have copies of the letters, you know, saying what each lot is restricted to. And we'll go through here in a little bit. I'll show you online how you can find well logs. And just some of you may have already been to the GWIC site, but there's maybe a little few tips that I could show you on how we've learned throughout the years on their website. And I'll show you on the water rights query system how you too can find water rights from your very own desktop. The water rights query system taps right into our database. You're not seeing the same thing I am, but it does give you a lot of access to the water right, you know, the water rights system, so that you can search water rights in different ways, and we'll go through that. And I just, the last one, we hear it over and over. A well log is not a water right. So believe it or not, we have a lot of people that think that they are. And I just wanted to mention again on our website, which we'll go there in a little bit, about you know, closed basins or those restricted groundwater areas. All that information is online. And what else? I guess the only other little note I have here is about fencing across ditches. So that kind of comes through our office a lot too. A lot of people, you know, coming from out of state and whatnot, they think that they can, you know, fence across a ditch. Well, that ditch has to be the access has to be left open so that the ditch users, the water users can, walk up and down that ditch at certain times of the year to do their, to do their cleaning and ditch maintenance and whatnot. If you fence across it, someone's going to get kind of PO'd about that. But so a lot of people think, well, it's my property, I can fence across it. Well, that's not necessarily true. So anyway, those are just some of the different things that we hear coming through on the phones and whatnot, and we address. So any questions on anything there?
Not yet, Kathy. I will let you know. Wait, oh, here we go. Are there types of fence you can and can't use to fence across a ditch? And if any good advice to avoid conflict there?
Well, I mean, I don't know. As far as I would say, no, there's no kind of good fence. If you do have to fence across the ditch, you just need to, we tell people you need to keep in mind that, that you have to have some kind of access so that the people can walk up that ditch, whether it be if you're going to fence across it, like say, at a 90 degrees or whatever, put a gate so that if someone's walking up the ditch that they could, they can continue to walk up the ditch and do their maintenance and do their cleaning. But, you have to give the ditch people access to that ditch. That doesn't mean that they, can like stop their truck on the street and walk clear through your property back to the ditch or whatnot. But a water user has the right to walk up that ditch and do the maintenance and do the cleaning.
And a related question, can you add a bridge to a ditch?
That, I don't know. We don't really get into that realm. As long as, you don't impede the flow of the water. Culverts are a little bit different. Putting culverts in a ditch, you would need permission of all the water users on that ditch before you altered that ditch. And by altering it, you'd be putting a culvert in it. And so that's a little bit different because you would need all of the water users permission to do that. But putting a bridge over it, as long as you like I say, don't impede the flow and they still have, access, to do the cleaning, then it might be okay.
And I will go ahead and put a pin in that one too. We can bring that up again when we have some of our district ditch representatives here to see how they would answer that question.
Yeah, because I can see problems with putting a bridge because a lot of people clean ditches with, a lot of different ways. And if you wanted, back in the olden days, they used to have a horse or mule with, a plow behind it. And if you put a bridge over the ditch, then they're not going to be able to get their mule and plow up there. So that would cause a problem. So, all right, so we'll jump into how to find a water right. And this is a slide from our website. And up here is the address to our website. And Heather already showed you how you could get online. And there's a lot of links to a lot of different information that we listed there. But this is our homepage, and you can see right here it says Water Rights Query System, and that's where we're gonna go to find a water right. I think keep having these blank slides, and when you push how to find it, the Water Rights Query System, and this is what the first page that pops up, and you'll see that there's a simple search and there's an advanced search. And there's also videos on how to use this system. So it's really helpful to watch these videos. But on the simple search, if you already know the water right number, you can enter it here and notice the examples. There's different examples. If you don't enter it like the examples show, it's going to throw out an error or say, hey, we can't find anything. If you're looking by an owner's name, you can put the owner's name in there. Be real careful because this queries the whole state of Montana. So if you put Mr. Smith in there, you're going to get every Smith in the state. And you can query by geocode, and most of the water rights have geocodes attached to them. Not all of them, but most of them do. If you put in the geocode and you come up blank, and you just really, really think that there's water rights to that property, you can always call and we can look into it further. And then the advanced search, this is the advanced. If you hit the advanced tab, this is what you get. This is for, you can use this for all different types of searches through our database. You can search how many, what the water rights are on a stream or on a ditch. You can put that information in. Again, you can search by the owner name. You can search water rights by different sources, whether that be groundwater or surface water, different types of water. This is the last half of the page, but the search button is kind of inconvenient. It's down in the very right-hand corner when you hit the search button. When you do, I put in, I believe, Mill Creek in our basin 76H, and this pops up all the water rights on that are listed a source name of Mill Creek. And you can download this table into an Excel spreadsheet, and you can manipulate it any way you want. But basically what people would use it for is you're finding the water right to say the person, here's the owner that you want. And here you can view the documents that are all scanned in this file. You can get an abstract and you can do a map. So we'll go into documents first, and you'll get a window like this, and you want the one that says file. You just would click view, and you could view all of the scanned images that were handed in when that file was created. Or if you click the abstract, then of course you would, you get an abstract of the water right. And I don't think I printed an abstract. Oh, yep, I did. So there's an abstract of the water right, and you can print, from this too. So you can print one page, or like when you're viewing the documents, you could print the whole doggone file if you wanted to. Some of them are like over 100 pages long, but you could print one document, or you could print the whole thing, or download the whole file in PDF. But this would be a general abstract of that water right, which tells you all the goodies. Does anybody have any questions on that before we go into, how to find a well log?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. Okay. Where is my homepage? I'm going to drag this over here before we go into how to find a well log. This is the main page again. And as I was talking earlier, here's like all of the links. Here's all the forms that we were talking about. This lists all of the forms. And it's like, boom, there's all the forms. Now, got a lawnmower going. And right here's the basin closures that you had, if you had questions on. Here's the map, and here's the information. If you clicked on that, it would be a booklet, and it goes into all the different closure restrictions. And here's the controlled groundwater restrictions. So that information is there. And we have here's the water rights survey, old survey books. Here's just helpful resources water right dispute information, water rights in Montana. That's a great little booklet, which I have a link. Where Heather showed you all the links to the websites earlier on one page. This is linked in on that sheet too. And this is a really helpful book about water rights in Montana. And you can get to our statutes and our rules. So, there's a lot of information just, on this, on our website. Yeah, here's the water rights search. Here's the water rights query system. How do you search for a water right? Here's the Groundwater Information Center. That's how you would find a well if you're looking for a well. And
Kathy, it looks like, sorry, pause 1 minute. Looks like maybe the slides might be frozen.
Uh-oh.
We are looking at a slide from the Groundwater Information Center.
You didn't see my website?
This is still from Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology.
I wonder why you're not. So you don't see the our actual website?
Nope, this is just a slide for the
Oh my goodness.
searching by township and range for logs.
Okay, well, I don't know how to switch back and forth. I thought this would work. Here I am all over my website and you can't even see it. Okay, well, let's go through the groundwater information first, and then I guess I'll stop the slideshow and then go to our website. So the up top here is the address to the Groundwater Information Center, and that too is on the handout that Heather has posted on her website. And this is where you would find a groundwater well, and you would put in, the township, the range, you would choose the section, and you can choose the sort order, and I usually sort by the name. And the name on the well log, you need to keep this in mind, the name on the well log is going to be the name of the property owner at the time the well was drilled. The names on these well logs, there's nothing in place to change the names as ownership changes. So if the well was drilled back in the 70s and, Mr. Smith owned it in the 70s, it's still going to be in Mr. Smith's name. So you kind of have to do that chain of conveyance if you're looking for an older well log, because you're going to need to know who the heck, what the property owner's name was, because you're going to need to look on, come on, slide. You're going to need to look for that name, because once you put in section, township, and range, you pull up all the wells in that section, and I put them in order, by owner's name. And then that makes it easier if you know who owned it back then. You can just look for their name and then click on their well log, and you can print, you can print the well log too. And I'm going to see if I can switch over to my website so that we could look there. Hang on here. Okay, so can we see the website now? Our home,
Yes.
Homepage. Okay, so this is what I was saying. You already have the link there on that one page, but here's the water rights query system, and then here is the another place to search. It's the same tab for the query system. Here's the Groundwater Information Center. It's an easy link to get there. And then here's where I was explaining that there's helpful resources on our survey books and water rights in Montana, our statutes and our rule. And then here's the forms. You can click here, and it just takes you right to all the forms if you need to print out any of these forms. There's the 602 notice of completion, and the 608 is on here. So that's all of our forms. And then here was the information on controlled groundwater areas. There's the stream depletion zones. So there's tons and tons of, different types of information on the website, and a lot of it is printable. So, so it's a good source of information there. So anybody have any questions on how to find a water right in the query system?
Nope.
Oh, and just to mention that the water rights query system contains what I'm going to call state-based water rights. So any kind of rights or shares to irrigation districts, like you're going to hear from Daily Ditches and Brid later, those types of water rights do not exist in our query system. You would have to, if they have shares in any of those districts, you would have to call the district and get information on those through them. So any questions from any, I'm trying to find any of this stuff.
Nope.
One thing I wanted to mention too, these maps, if you click map, they're very generalized maps. It is not the actual place of use. And you can see this disclaimer note down here. It's like they're taken from the legal land description off of the water right, and they just show this box, but really the lot could be like right here. So they're kind of deceiving, these maps. So just be careful. Sometimes these dots where it says surface water diversion, look, it's a little bit off because here's the creek, here's the dot. So just kind of be careful with these maps. They're just kind of a generalization as to where, that water right is. And the view documents, they're pretty good if you're looking for old historic, maps in the file. See, this is a scanned image.
And Kathy, we actually can't see a map. I think we're on the wrong screen. We're still on the water rights query system page.
Oh my gosh. Okay. You can't see any scanned images?
No.
Okay. I guess that program won't work in the share screen. So you're still in the query system?
Yes.
Yeah. You were just saying, yeah, we got all this figured out. It's like, no. Sorry, I can't.
No, it looks like if you select the screen share, it'll give you the options for which of your screens you want to share might help.
Okay, how about that one?
We're seeing another one. This is a statement of claim for a water right.
Right, and this is like in the scan. Okay, so this is what you would see if you choose scanned images, and this is all the documentation that was handed in. Actually, this date was 1981 when they filed that statement of claim. We scan all documents that were handed in, and sometimes you can see, maps. You can see the original application. Here's the original decree. Remember the decrees I was talking about? This one's 1902. And somebody asked, well, how do you know whether you're part of that filing or not? Here's numbers and a decree the decrees have numbers, and so you would have to read through all this and, try to figure out if you were part of it. But it's kind of, if you're really doing some good digging, you can find some maps and explanations. And so every piece of paper that comes in this office pertaining to a water right gets scanned and put in that file. So it's kind of helpful when you're doing some research.
And Kathy, we have a question about properties where we can't find the well log. So the question is, can you talk more about the properties where you can't find the well log? What if we don't have the original name?
Well, if all else fails and you just, you really can't find a well log, I've seen, one of two things happen. Either you can file for a water right without a well log. So that can happen. And if you don't have a well log and there's already a water right existing and the people say, well, I want a well log, then you would have to hire, I don't know, either the driller or the pump service to just come out and, do a well inspection and a pump test if that's what they wanted. So they would test out your well, tell you how deep it is, how big the casing is, and they would kind of like create another, it wouldn't be a well log, but it would be a report on that well for you.
Thanks.
Any other kinds of questions? I know, I don't, well, Heather, that kind of wraps up everything here on my end. I don't have too much more to
Oh, wow.
share.
Okay. Well, that was great, Kathy. We do have a lot of time for Q&A here. So folks, anyone who's been holding on to a question about anything that we have talked about, so far today, or maybe something that we haven't been able to cover yet today, now would be a great time to put your questions before Kathy and have a crack at DNRC without having to navigate the website. Okay, we have one. Okay, it says, okay, you said no one really monitors use, but if someone changes their practice and it will impact other people's access to water or return flow to the river, like at fetch-in, what can be done? And never mind, don't mention fetch-in. Okay, this doesn't have to be specific to any property. Just if someone is doing something that may adversely affect other people's access to water or return flow to the river, what can be done?
Well, they can call the DNRC, the office, and Jim Nave is the regional manager here. And they can talk with him, and then he could tell them, what the steps forward would be. I mean, it just, that question, like I say, nothing at the very beginning, nothing's black and white. There's, a lot of questions that would have to be answered before we chose a path forward as to what could be done or what a good solution would be. And, an example of that is I had ranchers just coming in here. One side would come in and tell one story, the other side would come in and tell another story, and it just went on and on and on. He's taking my water, da 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 da. Well, after all, and it took like 2 years to get to this point, but after all the fuss and everything, finally we talked him into actually putting a measuring device on the ditches and on the head gates. All the problems were solved. So sometimes it's a simpler solution. You don't always necessarily have to go to court and write threatening letters and whatnot. It can be a simple solution like that. So to answer that question, there are solutions, but I would just suggest if a situation is going on, you can, like I say, call Jim Nave, our regional manager, talk to him about it, and he can, ask all the questions and get off some answers and get a path moving forward.
Thank you. Okay, and question, when searching by T-R-section, could you explain what the letters mean alongside the location?
On the GWIC site, or on the
Well logs.
well log site? Okay, let's go back to that. T stands for township, and R stands for range. Oh, right, probably right here. T stands for township, R stands for range, and then the S is this section, and they were probably asking about this site here. Heather, can you see the GWIC site?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Well, they probably were. It says township right there. Township, range, and section. So I don't know where they were referring to.
It's in the quarter section portion.
That's township and range. Whoops. Oh, here, the A, B's, and C's. If that's what they were referring to, those are quarter sections. Because that's township, that's range, that's the section. And then the quarter section, the well drillers, they're backwards from what land surveyors and what DNRC is, but that CCA, they take their quarter sections and they label them A, B, C, D. And so A would be like the northeast quarter, B, C, and C would be the southwest. So this would be the southwest, northeast. That's what they're trying to tell you there. If that's what they were asking.
Great. I think that's right. Yep. Okay. A question, is it a good idea for a client to measure their water rights to be able to defeat, maybe that means defend, I'm going to say probably to defend them in the future?
I'm assuming we're talking about surface water rights, and yes, that would be a good thing. More people need to measure and keep track of really what they're using.
Okay. Can a landowner create a continuous berm to create a reservoir above ground for catching water from rain or snow without digging into the ground or disruption of the water table?
Oh my gosh. Well, anytime you impound water, you're going to need a water right for that. And it just depends on the size of that as to what type of water, what form you would use, the 600, the permitting form, or if you would use the 602, the groundwater form. And Montana's rules on capturing rainwater, they're not real definitive at this point. Other states have actual water capturing rainwater, but I don't believe Montana's quite there yet. So, and I'm not real adverse because we've never had one. So, but I know there's certain rules as to how much you can capture and things like that. But like I say, Montana's just not quite there yet with issuing water rights for rainwater. I'd have to look that one up.
Okay, it sounds like the question was answered. Okay, could you elaborate on what a stream depletion zone is?
Okay, we could go. right here, stream depletion. I forgot what screen we're on here. Let's pick this one. Okay, can you see the stream depletion zone there?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think this is what you were reading earlier, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you can just read what's right here. Let's just pick Rye Creek. Notice of adoption. Let's just pick notice of adoption. See what we say here. See, it tells the purpose, comments. It doesn't give the restrictions though.
Yeah, okay, because the follow-up question is like if someone has a well log near Rye Creek, could they file with DNRC, or will no wells ever be able to be filed in the Rye Creek area?
Can you see the map that's there?
Yep.
Yep, that's this stream depletion zone, and I believe all the stream depletion zone says it. Heather, wasn't it that you were reading that you're just limited to the amount gallons per minute that you can take out? I believe you're just limited.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I just know that that's one of the few areas in the region that has any type of sort of rule or yeah, regarding withdrawals, but I couldn't tell you the details on that.
Yeah, and I'd have to read up on them, but here's the map of the stream depletion zone. So if your well is outside of this red line area, you're fine. You can file a groundwater certificate on that well for the 35 gallons a minute and 10 acre feet. But I here's the petition. Maybe this will tell. Oh, no. That's actually filing for it. I don't know. There's tons of information here, but I just don't know offhand. But see, this a stream depletion zone is different than the controlled groundwater area. But if your well is outside of that mapped boundary, you're fine to go ahead and file a water rate on that well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And okay, other questions? What rights are needed to put water in a pond? Does a pond count as a beneficial use?
The pond has to have a beneficial use, such as fish and wildlife, recreation, irrigation. You can put a pump in a pond and irrigate out of it. So the pond itself has to have a purpose, a beneficial use. Just the pond sitting there is, it has to have a purpose. And aesthetics is not a purpose. But in the Bitterroot Valley, it depends on what's feeding the pond. Surface water, to get a new water right, let's just clarify, to get a new water right on a pond, surface water cannot feed that pond. It has to be groundwater. By groundwater, we mean anything coming up underneath the ground. Nothing can be flowing across the surface into that pond. And the pond has to be a certain size in order for it to fall in the sideboards of that groundwater certificate that you're going to apply for. Because the pond cannot hold more than 10 acre feet. And that means that one fill and evap. So the evaporation has to be counted in there too. So your pond is limited to a certain size. But to dig a pond now and run surface water into it, totally illegal. Okay.
Okay. Last chance for questions with Kathy here, gang, before we move on, and we will probably show a video here on groundwater. Just we've been talking about that a lot today, so we'll just show a little video on groundwater since we're ahead of schedule and that fits with everything. But yeah, before we lose Kathy and her DNRC expertise, any final questions, comments for her? Okay, looks like you just really nailed it, Kathy.
Good.
If questions do come up after the fact today, you can go ahead and get in touch with us probably through Naomi or through our website at BR Water Forum, and we can try and get those questions out to the presenters.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Hope I didn't bore you to death.
No, not at all. We have in the chats here. Thank you for your knowledge and expertise, Kathy.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Everybody have a good rest of their day.
Okay. So, folks, I'm just going to take you to, I'm going to do the screen share here to go through the Water Forum website again for how you can get to some of these resources. So again, this is our homepage here, brwaterforum.org. So you can find loads of information here, but when you're looking specifically for resources, videos, links to articles, that's under this. This is more like our blog, the what's happening page here. So we can go down to the did you know? These are some of those videos that we talked about before, and we'll just share this one on groundwater because so much of what we talked about here today is about some of those groundwater, surface water connections and why you can or cannot link different uses. So here you go. Okay, I was told we might be having a problem with sound on this one. Sorry, closed the little chat window. I couldn't see while we had the video. Let me investigate here. Maybe we have the website is unmuted. Cha, cha, cha. Okay, let's see. Still no sound on that. Still no sound. You can hear me. Okay, well, I can't navigate for Jeanette here. She knows groundwater better than I do. Couldn't tell you, unfortunately, why that's not working. Okay. Well, then I guess I will just direct you on your own time to try and check that out. Let's see, because I've got the volume turned up all the way on these systems. Okay, let's see. Let's see, I got my tech person here. I don't know, Katie, let's see what.
The river gained water in that reach year round from groundwater. It gained anywhere from 45 to over 500
Can you fix it?
cubic
Okay.
feet.
Woo! Thanks for my tech
Groundwater-
person was looking out from the other room. Okay, here we go. Starting again with Jeanette. We'll only have time for this one video now, but we'll get it with sound this time. So here we go.
Is basically water that's held underground in sediment, in the the pores and openings in between sediment or fractures in rock. So the pores, when I talk about the pores, I'm talking about these blue spaces here. And this is where groundwater is. It's between the pore spaces in the sediment or rock. When we talk about rock, though, a lot of times the rock is fractured. And so here's an example of where groundwater can be recharged through water that migrates down through these fractures. My name is Jeanette Abdo, and I work for the Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology, more specifically the Groundwater Investigation Program. So the Bureau of Mines and Geology, we're the equivalent of the State Geologic Survey, and we do geologic mapping and water resources for the state of Montana. Here's some sands and gravels. So these are like the fill deposits in the Bitterroot Valley, or in a lot of other valleys in Montana. And so groundwater would occur in the pore spaces in these gravels and sands. And then here's an example of the fractured bedrock, and you can see this fracture right in here. So these are conduits for groundwater or surface water to move down and recharge groundwater. Surface water is maintained during the winter months and low flow periods. It's maintained by groundwater. So groundwater feeds these rivers. These rivers can gain water from groundwater. So here's an example of a gaining stream. You could pretend this is the Bitterroot River. So the groundwater adjacent to the river is at higher elevation, right? So you could see it's higher than if you looked at the height of the water in the stream that you're talking about. Groundwater likes to flow from high to low, so it's moving towards the river. So that stream is gaining water from groundwater. A great example of that, we did flow measurements on the Bitterroot River from Engler's Roost, just south of Hamilton up to Woodside Crossing over by Corvallis, and we found that that the river gained water in that reach year round from groundwater. It gained anywhere from 45 to over 500 cubic feet per second of water. So in that reach, the Bitterroot River is gaining water. In other reaches, and I'm not specifically talking about the Bitterroot right now, but I know in other smaller tribs coming in, you can have losing reaches. So if you look at this bottom picture, right now, my groundwater is at lower elevation than the height of the water in the stream. And again, water likes to flow from high to low. So it's moving from the river or the stream into the aquifer. Now it's moving in the other direction. So you can see these flow lines are moving outward. We call that a losing stream. Okay, so streams and rivers, they can gain water from groundwater, or they can also be a source where they lose water. This surface water can lose water to groundwater. And what's really interesting is this can vary throughout the year. During parts of the year where a river's getting a lot of recharge from that snow melt, stream flows are up, the stream might be losing water, but in other times of the year, it might be gaining water. So that it's a little confusing, but it's connected. Groundwater and surface water are connected.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, everyone. Some of our speakers were just joining us in the other room, so I snuck away. Thanks for working through the technical glitches with us. We have John and Rhonda are joining for the panel. We're getting them set up with my tech support. Shout out to Katie Venny with the Bitterroot Water Forum for fixing our glitches on this end. She's getting those two set up in the back so that they will be able to give the next portion of our panel lecture today. Just great resources for getting to know more specifically about how things work on the landscape here, being two of the, major ditches around here. They can field most technical kinds of questions, and I think they're sort of like me in if it's not on their ditch or they don't know, they will help us find the answers. So again, I'll just show you one more time in case anybody wants to peruse. It looked like folks were interested in making sure that they knew how to access some of those resources there. So
Groundwater is
don't worry, we won't watch this
water
one more time.
that's
Okay, just again wanting to remind you of the Water Forum website, and that some of these videos with John and working with a rancher, all available on our website. Again, brwaterforum.org, under the What's Happening page, info for realtors. That will take you to everything we've discussed so far today and additional videos for your perusing pleasure. So with that, we will take a little break here. If folks want to come back at 3:15, we can get started at 3:15, maybe end a few minutes early here today. So thank you. We'll see you at 3:15. Welcome back, everyone. We are in the home stretch now. I'm going to go move on to our panel discussion about irrigation systems and connecting folks to local knowledge. So we've been joined by John Crowley from the Bitterroot Irrigation District and Rhonda King from Daily Ditches. And just before we get started, I wanted to ask folks, we've done a training like this year after year. I can't even think of how many years now we've been offering training like this on water rights, but we know that there's been a whole lot of movement into the Bitterroot and a whole lot of new realtors. So I know there's a feature here where you can sort of react, you can raise your hand. So we're just looking for sort of a raise of hands, a show of hands, or if you could put into the chat box, if you're a new realtor. So if this course is new to you, if you're new to the Valley, if you're sort of new to these systems, we're just trying to get a sense as we go into this next bit for how deep to go and maybe starting at what level to start at. So please, if you are new, just let us know, raise that hand or put a message in here so we can just, okay. New realtor, new realtor, new realtor, 4. Okay, well, hands up. Okay, so between the messages I'm getting, looks like we have about a new agent is with someone else. Okay. So it looks like we have at least 8. And Brooke wants to know old realtors. I don't know, Brooke, if you want to clarify, is this an age limit thing or how long people have been doing the work? I don't know if we want to get in trouble with that today. I'll let people self-describe old realtor. Yeah, put that on you. Yeah. Okay, so it looks like maybe somewhere about 8 to 10 maybe new realtors today. And so with that, I will give it over to John and Rhonda to share all of their knowledge with us.
Yes. And then do you want me to share screen right now? It's okay. And then we can share the screen of this guy. Can get it into presentation mode. Do you guys want to try to say something to see if it sounds okay to Heather?
Sure. Can you hear us, Heather?
Yes, I can.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm John Crowley. I'm manager for Bitterroot Irrigation District. I've been there for approximately 17 years.
And I'm Rhonda King. I'm with Daily Ditches. I've been with Daily Ditches for 13 years. And yes, that's about it, huh?
Okay. So we're going to walk through some slides Rhonda and I kind of put together, just telling a little bit of difference between both our districts. And we're just 2 of the largest probably in the valley. There are several of them. So biggest thing, the biggest point we want to make today is if you have a question on water, about irrigation water, give us a call, please, so we can help you guys out there, especially the new people. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I know Daily Ditches and myself, Tim is the manager over there, but we'll get out on site. We can walk through, see what's going on. So again, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We've had a lot of calls, had a lot of success with this program. Rhonda, do you have anything to add with that? Or
Actually, and I've been doing a first-time homebuyers class, which really I think helps people. Just go through things that people need to be aware of out on the ground. Make sure that they're aware of the potential responsibilities in purchasing a piece of land and what their responsibilities are going to be with that. So we're just going to go through kind of from an irrigation district standpoint. There's lots of information, which I know Kathleen Schubert was with you guys earlier, information about all of the different kinds of water rights, our kind of water right, or anybody who has a right to water from either BRID or us. That's a kind of a special kind of water right. And as this slide shows, we're going to talk about water rights and ditch rights. They're 2 different things. And in order for somebody to get water, they have to have both. So if you want to start with.
next slide.
Yep.
All right.
You scroll it, or yeah, there you go.
All right. Let's see, district information, Bitterroot Irrigation District, Como Lake, we can store up to 38,495 acre feet. An acre foot of water is about equivalent to a football field, about a foot deep. So that's 1 acre foot. So the main canal we have is 72 miles long. So basically we go from Como Lake and we terminate down in the Eagle Watch area, if you guys are familiar with that area, a little bit southeast of Florence. Our district has about 146 miles of laterals or open ditches. Our maximum canal capacity is 350 CFS. And we also have what we call high water rights. We kind of touched on that just a smidge. So Rhonda.
Sure. So our water rights come off of the Bitterroot River and Scalcoa Creek primarily, along with several of the smaller creeks along the east side.
So apparently they're not seeing your advanced slides. You're stuck on
this is the first one.
So I'm not sure. Let's see. Let's not do that. Let me check with Heather that is
Okay.
showing the right thing.
We got it. That's
You
it.
have to go through mine
Yep.
all over again.
All fixed up. Good work, team.
Okay, great.
Do we need to go over that again, Heather?
If we could show the previous, I think we're fine. What we're on now, we'll have a recording of this so people can look it up later. But I think
Okay.
people are having a chance to kind of take that in now. I'm sure they were all listening, even though we couldn't see what you had on the slides. So I think we should be good.
Okay, very
Okay.
good.
Actually, we have 9 main canals instead of, or 11 main canals instead of 9. Totaling approximately 83 miles. Our district has approximately 146 miles of laterals, or what we call connecting laterals, or open ditches. And we carry up to 417 CFS, which you take the 417 times 40, which equals the amount of inches that we are allowed to carry throughout our 11 main canals. And one of the differences between us is that we deliver an inch to the acre and grid.
We're a half an inch per irrigated acre.
Yeah.
So. All right, just some more information. Grid irrigates 16,665 irrigated acres. We service approximately 1,560 water users. We have 15 private gravity lines, and I can explain or expand on that if need be. 3 Mile Subject District is our gravity lines also. So there's 5 of them down there. The main canal has 8 large siphons, and they're about 72 to 66 inches. So they're the ones that get us our water from one side of the draw to the other. So they're vital for us. They're our Achilles heel at times. So, and we got 97 head gates on the main canal.
Okay. And so daily ditches, we irrigate 14,843 acres. We service 2,090 users between south of Hamilton to north of Corvallis on the east side. And we have about 2,551 parcels that we service. So water is carried through buried siphons and flumes besides the open ditches. And we have 326 head gates actually on 11 main canals, not 9. I guess I didn't go through and correct all of that. So now the difference between, for daily ditches anyway, main canals versus laterals is something that we maintain all of the main canals. Whereas any laterals are the responsibility of the users for upkeep. So that's one of the differences between what we consider a main canal and a lateral.
And Rhonda brings up a good point. That's the same with us. Once the water leaves and we get a measurement off our main head gate, it's up to the users to clean and maintain their ditches. So at times it gets a little bit of friction. We'll go out there and help maybe one time, but for the most part, you as you talk to your potential buyers, you need to stress to them they need to be able to get along with people, especially with water, because it gets pretty contentious at times. And this year we had, with the hot weather, it really got, contentious. So they need to be patient. I mean, at times it's hard pushing water in 100-degree heat, and we both have our work cut out for us. So with that, I'll let that go. Next slide, or do you have anything to expand on? Okay.
No. You scroll.
It won't scroll.
That's not scrolling.
No, I keep getting the pop-up box.
Okay.
Katie.
Katie.
I can't see. Sorry. We can't get the next slide. I'm rolling and I'm clicking and
It's just not doing anything.
not yet. I
Maybe
did the
we need
first.
to know where. Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, I did it from there, but
Yeah. Oops.
Okay.
is that the right one?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So as far as ditches are concerned, I'm sure with both of our districts here, ditches cannot be filled in or moved without permission. And that usually that starts with the district coming to the district and saying, you know, I'd like to move this for whatever reason. Or I don't want to use this anymore. I want to build a house on it or whatever. We encourage you to come to the districts first, and then there are procedures potentially that can either help someone to get that completed legally. Because if somebody just decides to fill in a ditch or move it on their own, somebody later on downstream can say, excuse me, I need my water. And whether you've built a house on it or, you know, maybe put a garage on it, put a fence up next to it, it can be reopened for a downstream user if those permissions are not gotten. You have to you have to obtain permits from the districts for any main canal crossings. I know daily ditches, we have a $500 permit fee for any type of crossing, whether it's a bridge over the main canal or it's cattle guards or fencing. All of that has to be approved by the board, and there is a permit for those.
Yes, also with us, we don't have a $500 fee to do that, but you do need to have permission to put any gates, bridges, etc. going across the canal. So you need to come in, call the office. We need to go out on the site and take a look at it where you're gonna be at. So we're trying to minimize as much as we can bridges going across the canal. So we're really getting pretty stingy, I guess I should say. So what's happening is we do a lot of maintenance, and when we get out there, we cannot, we've got to have a sheep's foot that kind of packs the ditch, and this prevents us from doing that. And the reason we've got to do that is trying to keep the water in the ditch. So we have a lot of off-season maintenance, and with all these bridges starting to come in, we can't get any work done, so to speak. So, you know, every quarter block, half block, whatever, you know, we've got to climb out with the dozer and the sheep's foot. So board, it's going to be a case-by-case basis. So like I said, we're starting to get a lot of people coming into the valley, and we just again need them to come, like Rhonda said, need to come to the office and go from there. So subbing, this is starting to be more and more of an issue, and people are, when they're building these houses, they like that $1 million view, and they're starting to break in, you know, they're getting close to the ditches toe, what we call it. It's the bottom where the ground meets the canal. And if you break a seal, a lot of times you'll start seeing water. It's water that is subbing that usually goes into the aquifer. However, sometimes it gets into crawl spaces and that. The districts are not liable for this at all. So just be aware. So they're going to have to protect themselves by putting in tile drains or septic pump or something like that to keep that water out of their basement. So they just need to be aware. And a lot of times if we're out on site, we can see locations. You can see by the thick bladed grass, you know, this is an area that's really subby. So do you have anything to touch on that?
I guess kind of the bottom line with that is that you got to understand that these irrigation districts were over 100 years old. And they were started, Marcus Daly started daily ditches in the late 1800s. And so our system is that old. So our ditches precede all roads, all utilities, and most houses in the valley. And so we have had people come to us and say, Well, every time you turn on the ditches, I get water in my basement. And usually, you know, there is mitigation that can help with that, whether it's piping a ditch or whatever it is, because people are entitled to their water. But it just depends on the soils and what kind of soil there is and whether or not it's going to sub underneath. And so it's just something to be aware of. And, you know, we're certainly willing to work with people. So if somebody calls and asks, what about this area? Usually we can try and help with anything that's within our district.
Thank you.
So,
I want to interject you two for a minute. We have a question here in the chat box. What if someone buys a property with a fence already going across the ditch and the fence needs to be repaired? Do you still need permission, or can you replace the existing fence?
For us, if it's in the same footprint, I think you'd be fine. If it's a new fence, then yes, we'd like to see where it's being located. So
Yeah, and that would be the same for us.
So if it's an existing one, Heather, yes, they can replace it. But if it's a new fence, then we need to know about it.
You know, or even if it's something that is actually crossing a main canal, and if it's, you know, new holes need to be dug or whatever it is, that might be something I would encourage somebody to contact the district. Let us know that you are planning on redoing the fence, and so that we're aware of and can check out to make sure that it's not going to damage anything on the canal.
And that would be correct with us also.
Great, thank you.
Yep. Next bullet is wastewater. A lot of ours are mainly sprinklers. We do have some Illinois bench, especially that has open ditches and flood irrigation. So you're responsible for BRID, you're responsible for your wastewater. So if you're flooding across your field, you cannot infringe on somebody else's. You can't flood them out. So you need to be responsible for your wastewater. And that may be by cutting in a ditch right at your fence line and diverting it away from somebody else's, as long as you aren't putting somebody's structure in jeopardy, so to speak. So you are responsible for wastewater. Again, these are things that you give us a call at the district and we can kind of walk you through. Rhonda, do you have anything else?
Well, regarding wastewater, something to be thinking about. A lot of times where if you've got a large field that had been flood irrigated for eons, well, when it goes to get subdivided, it ends up becoming a situation where they're not going to be able to flood irrigate anymore. And so, and that's something we can address later when we're talking about subdivision reviews, basically. But because you are responsible for your wastewater, you can't flood somebody else out.
Okay, trees on right-of-way. These are really a burden for both districts. We at times get some hellacious winds, and the reason we're after the trees on the right-of-way is if we get a blowdown and it comes across the canal and we're to breach, water's everywhere, and it's just easier to have the trees removed off the right-of-way. So if people, you know, have property that's on the right-of-way, we're gonna more than likely take the tree. So it's just more of a threat to the canal. And like I said, we have 350 CFS. I don't need that roaming through the town of Hamilton or even down across somebody's field, because it's once we breach, it takes, depending on location, it's not like a hose babe, you can turn it off right away. So it can take up to 20+ hours to stop that water. So so that's why we're after the trees. It's just, for us, it's paramount that they be removed, especially cottonwoods. They're always breaking branches. We have large siphons where a lot of trees, pine needles, etc., get blocked up on the siphon, and a lot of times we have to bring up a piece of equipment out there. So even tumbleweeds, if you get a good storm, looks like a round bale coming off there when we pull that. So I'm sure Tim's same boat. Rhonda, do you want to expand for daily ditches or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I tell people that, if you're buying a piece of property that, it's next to a ditch and there happens to be trees that are within the easement or on the right of way, a lot of people say, well, I don't want my trees to come down. And so we try and work with people, but then as usually we find that when the tree blows down, all of a sudden it becomes our tree instead of their tree. And if that's the case, then we'll come in and we'll take all the trees that are there, since they are something that we own and we don't want them on there. So it's just something to be aware of, and just because they can be a detriment to the canals.
And just one other kind of a point to be made is if you have open ditches and people, they love that aesthetics of water. If people are planting trees around there, if users, they have the right to clean and maintain their ditches. If this tree is within the grasp of the footprint of the lateral, they can remove that tree. So if they have a $110 nice red maple, and if they ended up cutting it down, they have a legal right. So just for your potential buyers, just tell them to keep quite a ways away from the open ditches. So we don't need somebody, we don't need fights out there. No headaches. So.
And I have a follow-up question there that I think you answered for the most part, but it's just, do the ditch companies have the right to come onto any property with water rights to maintain the ditches and trees?
So now Daily Ditches has rights, and Brid has specific rights for their canals. Now we have, yes, we can go and I mean, we try to work with everybody. We let the landowners know what we're doing. We get their input from it. And we try and work together on that. But if it comes down to it being a major issue, then usually we're able to work with the neighbors and get those probably removed in the end, or else then they're responsible for it. And a lot of times they don't want to be responsible for them when they become a mess on the ground. So it's water commissioners have a right to go up, and even downstream users have the right to go up the ditch for the purpose of maintenance and repair so that they can get their water. Now, if that means potentially your ditch running through your property is not cleaned, is not maintained properly, and it's impeding the water for downstream users, those downstream users have every right to go up the ditch for the maintenance and repair. They can't go wandering around the property. It's a matter of staying on the easement, which can be anywhere from a 10-foot, 5 feet on each side of a ditch to, on up. But typically the 10 feet easements were based on 2 horses and a plow originally when those ditches were created. And so, but sometimes on plat maps, they'll say there's a 20-foot or a 30-foot easement. And so you split that in half, and that's what's on each side of that ditch for an easement for somebody to maintain.
Okay, that is a good question. For Brid, we're pretty simple. We have 100-foot, we have right-of-ways and easements. So from the center of the ditch, it's 50 on each side, unless we have like a steep slope, and then sometimes it's 35 and 65. So basically 100-foot easement for the big ditch is what it is. And that's our main canal.
Yeah, and our main canals, each of them are a little different. One has a 60-foot easement, another one has a 50-foot easement. And some of what we call our smaller main canals, actually it reads as constructed on the land. So it just depends on what it is. And so, but on those main canals, we are going to be the ones that are maintaining those ditches. Versus somebody who has a lateral, or maybe at the end of a lateral, and the only way they can get the water is to go up and clean it themselves. So.
Great. And we had one more question come in about water rights changes. So if someone is wanting to change out their flood irrigation right to sprinkler irrigation, how would they go about that? Would they just contact you?
Well, typically, we do not allow anybody to flood irrigate unless they have 10 or more acres. I always encourage people to let us know how they will irrigate, how they can and will irrigate, just like that bottom comment says, communicate with the irrigation districts about how you can and will irrigate. Because there are people say, I want to flood irrigate. Well, they only have a 5-acre lot. And so it's not feasible to do that. So, they can go ahead and try and dig ditches to, try and flood irrigate, but they won't ever really have enough water there to be able to irrigate that small acreage, because it takes a lot more water to flood irrigate than it does sprinklers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys are asking some really good questions.
Yeah.
Like Rhonda said, for BRID, that's even tougher because we are 1/2 inch per irrigated acre. So folks way back when, they had big heads of water, and these guys were good stewards of the land. So they were able to, use their water, catch their wastewater, and just keep using it. Today, if you have, say, a 5-acre parcel with 3 irrigated acres, ain't going to go 3 feet because you just don't have the head of water anymore. So we'd highly recommend sprinklering. Again, we're 24/7, so you can just keep moving your sprinklers all the way around. So we're 24/7, 7 days a week. So until we lose our water, but these are really good questions. We appreciate the feedback from you guys. Let's see here. Access, next bullet, access to canal. With all the building, this is really a hot topic, hot issues. We need to be able to get up into our main canals to perform maintenance, or if we have an emergency, say we're starting to see some water piping out of a ditch, we can't go down 5 miles and try to come back up and get on the ditch. We've got to find ways, accesses to our canals. So it's paramount that we're able to get through these access points that used to be there that people are starting to gate off. So these are critical items. It takes more time when we can, we get a lot of gophers out there. So these are things that, we need to be able to get emergency access up to the canal right away to prevent a big breach. So just if your potential buyers would kind of keep that in mind, if you see a BRID truck or a daily ditch truck coming through there, we don't mean no harm. We're just trying to find a fast access to get up there to, maybe there's something going on. Rhonda, do you have anything to?
And, more recently, for whatever reason this year, we have a lot of beavers on the main canals, building dams, and those can be very detrimental. So we've been thankfully getting phone calls on them, and we're able to take care of those. So if that's something you come across, we certainly are interested in knowing about it so we can get it taken care of. So we don't flood, because if we end up having a ditch break, it can flood houses. It can, and then we've got people who are completely without water. And when you've got thousands of users, it can be pretty detrimental.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to interject here. We had a couple of questions on measurement. So one question, and these kind of piggyback, is how do you measure who is getting what? And then the second is kind of tied into that. It was specifically for daily ditch. If you could mention that, it sounds like there's a requirement to install a water monitor in the daily district. If it, yeah, and at the cost of potentially $6,000, that could be surprising to some. So it'd be good to know more about that.
Okay, I guess I wasn't aware of the $6,000 thing. I think it depends on potentially where they're located and what kind of water is involved with it. We do have, since 1994, they said all new subdivisions, it's in the policies, all new subdivisions would require a measuring device and a locking valve. a flow meter and locking valve. I do know that DNRC is always asking, the river rider is always asking what kind of measurements we have and what we're, trying to keep on top of. And the more flow meters or measuring devices that are there, it can be anything from specific meters that are attached to either a pipe or a pump to see how much is being pumped. There are also what they call partial flumes, and actually John is a lot more knowledgeable of the different kinds of measuring devices than I am, since I am, even though I've been with daily ditches for 13 years, I've probably been out in the field maybe 5 times. And so I'm not really familiar with, although Tim has often showed me, well, when somebody is getting 1 inch of water, this is what it looks like in a board. And it's literally 1 inch high and a foot wide. And that's how you measure 1 inch of water. If it's going through some type of flume, to try and measure that. There's lots of different measuring devices.
Yeah, and like daily ditches, we have a lot of gravity systems, and Rhonda mentioned they're just enclosed systems. So we have meters that measure gallons per minute. So if we got a subdivision, say they have between say 10 users, they have 100 gallons. We keep them at that. So we'll give them plus or minus 10%. So and we have a valve that we lock, and we got can lids. So we have, that's probably the easiest way to measure. Everybody understands that. So we just do the math, get gallons per minute in a closed system, which is a meter. It's pretty simple. Open ditches, a little more difficult. Like Rhonda mentioned, there's partial flumes, V-notches, Ippolites, rectangular weirs. So these are just antiquated ways of measuring open ditches. So, and they're not antiquated. A partial flume is very, very accurate. So I'll correct that one. But a lot of times DNRC during the spring of the year, Larry Schock will put on a presentation on how to measure water. So if Larry ever has one, usually they advertise it. And this is just a great source, especially for realtors and new buyers, just to get out there and figure out what they have for open ditches. But if we have a problem area, there's going to be a measuring device. So it stops the belly aching or problems that water causes. So it's and it's also in Montana code annotated. If there's a dispute, we can go in there, put a measuring device, and it comes off their money. So we try to do the best, but for the most part, people need to work it out amongst themselves. We aren't going to get out there and get involved. I mean, we hate to say it, we've got other things to do, but it gets pretty challenging, pretty difficult. Somebody's always being aggressive on using their water. So, we're out there to help, but by no means we aren't going to get in the middle of a big battle. So that's what attorneys are. And in my opinion, if you go to an attorney, nobody's a winner other than the attorney. So if there's any attorneys watching, I'm sorry, but that's a point well taken there. So, Heather, are there any more, or is that?
That was that for measurement. Yep.
Okay, we can always circle back around if there's another question. So,
Great.
The last bullet is communicate with irrigation districts about how you can and will irrigate. For us, it's critical. Like I said, especially realtors, we'll bend over backwards to do everything we can to help you understand. If you have a new owner, don't hesitate to call us. Rhonda, do you have anything to add on that?
No, we are going to be going through subdivision rules, some of our policies regarding that. I'm sure that's probably what the measuring devices was in reference to, because we do require that any farm unit divided, which is what we consider anything subdivided, whether you want to call it a major, a minor subdivision, or it's a family transfer, a boundary line relocation, court-appointed splits, anything that creates a new parcel or splits up a parcel is considered dividing that farm unit. And so, and we, as districts have rules, to try and preserve the water being able to get to all parcels, assuming that there is enough water for all of the parcels. Because sometimes you may have a 10-acre parcel, maybe only 5 is irrigable for whatever reason. Well, then you're not really worried about getting water to half of that piece, but the portion that is getting it, you know, we're just trying to make sure that all of the easements are in place and everything, so that when it is split, that there isn't going to be issues down the road because neighbors aren't getting along and they say, well, no, you can't come on my land, you know, to maintain this. And so anyway, we'll get to that here in a little bit.
This is a picture. This was, you can see a new foundation being put in, and you can see kind of to the right of the slide where water's starting to build up around the wall of the foundation or the footing of it. So these are things that I'm talking about. It's just a picture says 1,000 words. So this was a great big field that used to be flood irrigated, a lot of springs. So again, we're not liable for this problem here. So just kind of forewarn your potential buyers out there that, you know, just kind of look at the location and see where they're, you know, what's going on or what's being, whether this has been, you know, flood irrigated or not. So sprinklers, maybe not as much, but we do have a lot of springs. When we start to fill up, well, of course, we're going to start filling up the aquifer, and these springs are going to get active again. So like I said, they need to protect themselves as potential home buyers or homeowners with crawl spaces, et cetera. Rhonda, do you have anything on that? Or
No, yeah, we're not. Now, if a basement gets flooded because it went over the banks, yes, that is our problem, and that's something we would be responsible for. But if it's subbing into the ground and going in there as a result of that, that's not anything we can do anything about.
Yep. Next slide. Thanks. Okay, these are some of the Montana code annotated. Interference with canal or ditch easement is prohibited. Let's see here. Trying to think here. That you can go ahead, Ron. I'm gonna look up.
You know, I think what John was in bringing some of these up is that we've got some people say they don't want their neighbors on their property, or they don't want anybody to come in and clean on their property. But according to Montana codes annotated, you can't interfere with, you know, whether it's the ditch rider or a downstream user coming up. And if you don't want them on your property, I encourage you to make sure that those ditches are clear, and so that they're not having to come up on the property.
Yeah, so that 7017-112, that's what we were kind of talking about. A person has a secondary right to clean and maintain the canal. So that's when they think they're trespassing. They are not. They have a legal, you can see that Montana code annotated. They have a legal right to go up in there and clean and maintain their ditches to get their water to their property. So next slide, or pardon me, not MCA, next bullet, 85-7-1924. Interference with a commission or distribution system, there's a penalty. Folks, if you're buyers and if you guys are water users, if you see a head gate lock, do not tamper with it. It carries a stiff penalty. So if it's locked, there's a reason, because we've had problems. So if the ditch riders are out there, they have a legal right, and there's teeth, as you can see in Montana code annotated. So they're just trying to get their job done, trying to get water to whomever. So Rhonda, do you have anything?
And on the other end of that is making sure there's not too much water so that somebody ends up getting flooded out, because you know, sometimes a culvert needs to be replaced, or the ditch needs to be maintained enough that it can't carry all of the water that somebody maybe furthest down on the lateral is looking for water, but they can never get enough to come through. So they end up wanting to open up the head gate more, and it ends up overflowing. And there's usually the reasons why we put, and especially in a dry year, putting the locks on the head gates so that, just anybody can't go up and, open it up more or whatever.
Yeah, and 85-7-1923, the same thing, entry on land. So it's just kind of reiterating that, people can legally go on somebody within that footprint, not wandering around. So probably a duplicate there, but irrigation ditches, non-liabilities, that's where we're talking about the groundwater. So it's just something that, people we're going to sue you because, well, like Rhonda said, we have been there for a long time. We've been around since 1906, so we're about 110 years old, and Daily Ditch is a little bit older than us. So we've been there for a long time. And like Rhonda said, there's not too many houses that have been there that period of time. So there are a few though.
Mm-hmm.
So next slide. Oh, wow. Need my glasses for this one.
I don't know if you can see it better in the
Yeah.
TV.
This is this is just really fast. We have a checklist. So if you as realtors, if you want to if somebody's fixing to do a subdivision, we have a checklist that you can go through and walk through on it. So obviously you need a plat map for the parcel being subdivided or family transfer or boundary line relocation. So this just lets us know how much water is, who's going to move what, where, etc. So seller is required to fill out a water allocation agreement, and that just basically tells us how many irrigated acres are being attached to each parcel. We can't have more acres of land than irrigated acres of water. So subdivisions must have recorded easements in place for buried pipelines. Like I mentioned, we have a lot of people that are starting to put in gravity lines. And folks, it's when you get a subdivision in place, and if you need to make a repair, maybe not so much now, but down the road, you have a legal easement to go in there, recorded easement to go in there to maintain that buried pipeline. So Ron, if you see anything, you can holler or chirp out.
The next slide is
Big one.
us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All turnouts must be downsized for appropriate amount of water. If we have a 3-inch riser coming up on a 1 acre parcel, they'll have 13 sprinkler heads going. So the board is going to make them go to about a whole size hose bib, so about 1 inch coming out. So we just want to be careful of how much water is being placed. So if you give them a 3-inch riser, and sure enough, we'll have, they'll be overwatering and it just causes problems. So meter and a valve, we talked about that. Or some type of measuring device so the ditch rider can monitor. There needs to be a point of contact for the subdivision or the HOA that can be notified if there's a problem. All divisions of land with Bitterroot Irrigation District water attached must go before the district board to be reviewed for approval. So if you have say we have a board meeting on Tuesday and you're calling Monday, you're going to have to wait. We have at least 48 hours notice for you to get on the agenda for the board meeting. So please, if you see anything, if you're helping somebody that's starting to subdivide land, get in front of the board early. Give us some time. We can't jump through hoops. They do a lot of amazing things, but everything has to go through the board for approval. And again, for further information on divisions of land, look at our district operating policy. And we have a website, which is, I think, towards the very end. So,
yeah.
Rhonda.
Now your board meetings are second Tuesday of the month?
Yes, at 10 o'clock in the morning. So.
And Daily Ditches has one on the second Tuesday of the month, and it's at 5 p.m. So, and we also have it needs to be in before the Friday before the meeting in order for us to be able to address it at the meeting. Now, I'm just put on here, this is basically daily ditches policies. It's a lot of what John was talking about. You know, what we're looking for is a detailed construction drawing that basically has all existing ditches, all proposed ditches, any easements that are existing, anything that is proposed. Now one of the things that I'm not sure if Brid does this, but no water will be delivered to any divided farm unit until an irrigation plan is submitted and approved by the district board. So we will not deliver water to a parcel that has been subdivided until we can get an irrigation plan approved and implemented. So that's just something to be thinking about. We do get notices from the county now. We didn't always get it, but we do get emails from them with every major and minor subdivision, also with the subdivision exemption approvals. We don't get notification until after they're approved by the county, but it also states in those subdivision exemption approvals that you know, the landowner has to comply with irrigation districts and what their policies are. Even though it's been approved by the county, you know, each of the districts have their policies as to what needs to be done with the water. So usually we'll get a hold of whoever's doing it and saying, you know, we've noticed that you have done, whether it's a family transfer or boundary line relocation, and these are the items that we need before we can deliver water to your parcels. So I think I was just going to make this available to Heather, that she can post this slideshow up, and if you guys wanted to go back to that, you can certainly look at this again, or, you know, please just give us a call. We can give you the information and help with that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point. The same with us. If you put in a subdivision and it doesn't get approved by the board, we will not provide water to that until everything's done properly. So thanks.
Okay, and with that, you two, I'm just going to pause. We have a couple questions here, and thank you for offering it. We will put this PowerPoint presentation on the Realtor tab on our website, but we have a couple of questions, including about the subdivision. Will there be a point where Brid or Daly will no longer be able to service new subdivisions, even if the land had Brid shares connected to it at the time of subdivision planning?
You know, it's a good question. So parcels, if the water, our water is attached to the parcel, and I believe Daly Ditches is too. So if you subdivide it, the seller needs to. That's why it's critical. They need to come in. That water stays attached to that parcel. So if they're going to subdivide, then they need to break down their water right. So that water remains on there. And it's critical that each one of them parcels, that if they give a certain amount, that they have a means of getting water to that parcel. A lot of times they get locked out, or they can't, you know, they'll have a subdivision and they can't get the water to the potential user, because that's why it's good for us to look at the plat map or the footprint of what you're doing out there, so we can make sure. But our water's attached to the parcel, and the bottom line is, and then it just gets broken up from there, so it stays attached. So if they're doing a subdivision, it's just smaller amounts of water. Rhonda?
So we had a situation this year. It's the first time ever that when I was doing my tax assessments, is that we had 3, or I'm going to have up to 5, I think, parcels in the town of Hamilton that went from having water attached to it to those parcels were given the opportunity to petition out because it can no longer consume the water on the land, because they have turned them completely into parking lots and townhomes. There's no irrigation that will be done on those parcels. And that's the only time I know our board would consider allowing a parcel to petition out of the district. according to Montana codes annotated, because we used to be owned by the state. And when the state decided to abandon the daily ditch project, they wanted to turn it over to the farmers, and they did in the form of creating Daily Ditches Irrigation District. So we used to be a state project, and so it was Montana codes annotated says that if anybody is to receive water from daily ditches, they have to petition the land into the district so that it can receive that water. Well, there's also a petitioning out process, which is exact same thing as petitioning in, it's just obviously the opposite way. But the only time the board would allow a parcel to petition out of the district is when the land can no longer consume the water. Such as a commercial building with a parking lot, or that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, and that just circle back around on that. That's, you know, there's a good points. We can't go less than an acre. So anything less than that, we're a little bit different. We got 16,665 irrigated acres. We have a lot of people on the list looking to purchase water from BRID. If something happens to that, they would have to, like Rhonda said, they'd have to sell their water basically. And yeah, it's just, and they'd have to go dry because we can't do less than an acre of ground. That's the smallest amount for irrigation for the district. We're starting to get involved with petitioning in and out, so that's definitely on the radar, and it's coming up here really fast. We have a meeting on Tuesday about this, so yeah, so a lot of big steps coming up, or a lot of yeah.
Now, currently, daily ditches cannot, the users cannot sell their water. It just stays with the land as part of property ownership, and it's just because the water stays with the land. Because I have, you know, a lot of people who live in town, they don't use it for whatever reason, or they've chosen not to, and they want to be taken, you know, basically they want our assessments taken off of the taxes. And I basically have to tell them, you know, it's part of property ownership, and because you choose not to does not mean the next owner won't choose to use it. So that's where it stands right now, unless, again, I have like 5 parcels that just in the last year that they started erecting townhomes on these parcels and have covered up with buildings and parking lots. So we can't get water to those pieces anymore. So those will be petitioning out and will no longer have water available, irrigation water on them.
So, and with all the subdivision going on, this is BRID's probably going to start kind of looking at how Daily Ditches is conducting business, and this is, you know, potential, you know, future changes coming to BRID. So we'll be looking at this over the winter months. So good question.
Great. And you answered, it sounds like another question, Rhonda, that we had here, which was, are the water rights attached to the property or owned by BRID or Daily?
Yes, I mean, for definitely for daily ditches, it is the water stays with the land. And so, you know, it would be a totally new world, so to speak, that if we had somebody who wanted to sell, we have a GIS project that seems to be ongoing forever, but I'm hoping here this next year, it'll get completed. But I'm GISing all of the ditches, the laterals, and the main canals, and we are accounting for every pump, every head gate, every bridge, every structure that would be within or on the ditches, and so that we can figure out where water is. Because if you've got somebody who's up at the top and they decide they want to sell, that would be a lot easier than somebody who's at the bottom and we can't get that water back up to the top. And so there's lots of things to be thinking about there. So I'm not sure if we'll ever be able to sell.
Probably not.
And so,
Yeah, that, our water is also attached to the parcel. The district owns the water right to use the water.
Yeah.
Or to, they own the water right, and then the person that has the parcel, they pay for the right to use the water, so.
yeah, pay a service fee to
Yes.
the district to deliver the amount of water that they're entitled to,
Yes.
that they're paying for.
Great. And then a couple of questions on access, but looks like this is related. So with daily ditches, upon a property sale, there is not a water right transfer fee, correct?
That is correct. It's because it's the parcel that owns the right to the water, not the owner. So, and I know, Britt also, we do an ownership update once a year. And I think we're gonna start doing them earlier, but it always is usually like June of every year where we get the tax roll from the county.
Yep.
They, which gives us all of who the current owners are at that time. And, you know, I encourage anybody who has water with daily ditches, you know, they're going to see it on the taxes, have them give us a call so I can get that updated, you know, throughout the year. And that I would prefer that instead of having a, but I'll always have an ownership update once a year anyway. So, you know, we haven't raised our rates and since 2013 was the last time we don't anticipate needing to raise at all. We are, you know, have some money going into some infrastructure in the next year. We're replacing one of our flumes and we have a new way to potentially get water down towards the end. Now, as an irrigation district, we have the right, even though we have water rights off of Scalco Creek and several smaller creeks, we have water rights off of the Bitterroot River, and we are a ditch system where, like I said, we have 11 main canals, and each of those canals dumps into another one. And in the end, whatever that is not used ends up back in the Bitterroot River. So if we see that we need water towards the end of the hedge or something, we can, you know, dump water from another place, you know, to try and get water there. We can move water around, whereas somebody who has a DNRC water right for a specific piece of land, they can't move it to another parcel. They can't allow they're technically not supposed to allow their neighbor to use their water. It's supposed to be used on a specific piece of land, whereas we can move things around to get water to whoever one of our users is.
And since you're talking about that, if you guys have customers, pardon me, or potential buyers, if they go up to Como Lake today, they'll see how low it is. This lake was built for irrigation, not recreation. So we use that as a source of water. That's our only source. I mean, we do pick up water, but we have high water rights, so from all the other tributaries. So if they come here in you know, April, May, June, July, they'll see a full reservoir. But as you know, late July comes in August, as you locals know, it's down to bare minimum now. So that's perfectly normal for us. So we can only go as long as our reservoir, and then we've got to keep 3,033 acre feet for fish water. So that's the commitment we have with DNRC for FWP for delivering fish water. So it's important, especially now, you know, with the hot weather we had. So we're starting to deliver fish water, 50 CFS. So just kind of a note, you know, they'll go up to Como and think this is a beautiful, pristine lake. It's used for irrigation. So.
Well, and another one is Painted Rocks Reservoir. It was an irrigation. And so there are 3 entities that take water out of or own the water in Painted Rocks Reservoir. There's 10,000 acre feet that is contracted with irrigators out of Painted Rocks. And so that helps irrigation later in the season for some of those irrigators that purchase water from that. Daily Ditches is one of them. And so that's why I'm aware of it. But also Fish, Wildlife and Parks has so many acre feet out of there, and DNRC owns, you know, a certain amount also. And so it's all feeding water into the river to keep the water levels up as much as it can, depending on how dry the year is. So.
Okay.
Okay, and I don't know if you have more slides that you want to get through. I just want to give sort of our, 15-minute, we're just shy of 15-minute warning here.
Yeah, I don't know
A
if
couple
there's
questions here that I'm going to hold till the end.
yeah, we're not done.
But yeah, just if you had any more slides or just, make sure we let you get through those.
So this will be, like I said, you can have a copy of this, and these are just ways that we can be contacted. We both have websites. We both have Facebook pages. There's our address and a phone number and emails where anybody can contact us regarding those. Also, one thing is Brid, and I also thankfully to Brid's secretary is really good about updating an irrigation sources list, and it basically gives us people who deal with each of the different irrigation districts. And I get a lot of phone calls saying, do you have a number for so-and-so? We are more than happy to try and help people find people they can contact. We can't give you advice about somebody else's district, but we can certainly try and get you in contact with somebody who might be able to help.
So, and that's a good point, Rhonda. We get a lot of phone calls, and we can field them to whomever. So we try the best we can, but we can leave this list with Heather. We usually leave a list with her. And this one was a Bitterroot Valley irrigation information for 2021. So we got a lot of irrigation companies or ditches, districts, etc. If you guys see something that that's not on here, if you can provide the information to Heather so we can update this, it just helps us all out. So if we get a call and we know it's daily ditches, we'll just tell them, oh, that's daily ditches, you need to go here. Or if it's Sunnyside let's see, Corvallis Canal, Canyon Creek, Blodgett, Lomo, Sleeping Child. We've got a lot of points of contact, so it's a good list. A lot of times during springtime on the west side, we get a lot of people calling saying they're getting flooded out. What can you guys shut off the water? We can give them a point of contact, but that's about as far as we can go. So it's very helpful. We even get calls from the 911 dispatch center. People are frantic, and we understand that. Nobody wants water in their house or basement. So this list we can leave. Heather, they can put it on their webpage, but it's a good source of information for you as sellers out there, or realtors, pardon me. So
Thanks, you two. We'll be sure to get that on the website. And if that's the last slide you have.
yeah.
Okay, the biggest takeaway from this is we really encourage you are not bothering us. Please give us a call, and we will do whatever we can to try and help you out with the water.
Yeah, and it's and again, like I mentioned, we've done this for several years now with realtor training, so to speak. But we're getting a lot more calls, and we appreciate it. And every time we get done with the call, or after I get done with the call, I thank the realtor for calling, because it just clarifies, helps everybody out in the long run. Us and especially you guys. So just again, we appreciate it. So communication vital for us. I think that's it.
Yep.
I think there's questions at the end. I think that's
Thanks, y'all. Yeah, lots of thank yous in the chats here. You could always do a stop your screen share so we can see your beautiful faces again. And then we'll wrap up with the last few questions here. I had a couple saved. Lots of thank yous. Oh yeah, great information coming through here. Okay, so let's see. Questions on access. So one was, what about people using the ditch roads for exercising and off-roading?
Brid policy, we can't have any third parties. We have a right-of-way or an easement, and that's with the landowner of that parcel. We cannot have any third parties, which are usually ditch walkers. We can't have any ATVs. We get a lot of people floating the ditch. It's not a lazy river. There's a hazards on our project. So mainly the siphons. So we do not allow any third parties. As much as we'd like to say yes, we cannot allow that. So
Yeah, as our ditches we only have easements that run through all of the properties. And I tell people when they call, can I ride my bike? Can I walk the ditch? Can I float the ditch? Or can I ride my horse up on the ditch? And we tell them that we cannot give third-party permission. We do not own the land. We only have an easement for the purpose of maintenance and repair of those main canals. And I encourage them, contact your neighbors. And if they're okay with it, that's up to them. But we cannot give you permission to do that.
and we just, for us, it's just no third parties. It's just too hard, too difficult. So it's so we're the bullies.
Great. We have another question here. If a covenant states that each owner is responsible for ditch maintenance, how would you enforce equal shares of the work for maintenance?
That is, oh boy, that's a
Good
really
luck.
good question. Yeah. Rhonda hit the nail on the head. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we've had this people not willing to chip in, or it's just they're going to have to work it out amongst themselves. And like Rhonda said, good luck. So there is no simple. For us, we just get a group of people, and I just happen to be on a main ditch with daily ditches. So it's just, and they do a fabulous job. But folks, like I said, these people coming into the valley not familiar with irrigation, they need to be neighborly, need to work, help one another. That's bottom line. And a lot of friction out there with water. So
Well, and something also to kind of think about is that when we're talking about turning on and turning off water, it's not like turning a faucet on or turning it off. It's not instant gratification. When somebody calls and says, I don't have enough to irrigate, we say, okay, we'll get it turned up. It'll take probably half the day to get there.
Yep.
It's not a matter of, even if they just open up the head gate further, that doesn't mean you're going to have that much more right away. It might mean that they have to go up to the head of the main canal and open it up some to make sure that everybody can get more water. So it just takes time sometimes.
And Heather, going back to that question, if people clean and maintain their ditches, a lot of times throughout the season, you get the long grass and it kind of goes into the ditches, and then water gets everywhere. So it's not getting down to them. So it's a continuous process. So they got to, keep on cleaning and maintaining their ditches. Now, if they're out there weed whacking, try not to get the clippings in the ditch. People get upset on that. So
yeah, because it just plugs up head gates.
Yes.
And then nobody gets water.
Yep.
And that was part of the question too, was how much are they responsible for? Is it all the way up to the head gate or beyond?
Yes, it's up to the head gate because our responsibility ends at that first head gate off of the main canal.
And ours is also, so they got the responsibility. So if you're a bottom user, you have the right to go all the way upstream up until the main head gate. So it's best to have a good working group there.
Great. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. So helpful as always. And like I told you all, like they said, they're great resources. Never hesitate to call. I think we'd all rather have, calls and questions than the alternatives to that. So we'll get all of their information up on the website. Anything else, Ron and John?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. And Rhonda or Naomi, any closing statements from the Realtor? Anything that people need to know as we close up here?
No, I don't think so. You guys, thank you so much. That was a great class, very informative, and we appreciate your time so much. I don't think Naomi, do you have anything to add?
She says certificates will be on Ramco.
Oh, right, certificates will be on Ramco.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody so much. Again, the Bitterroot Water Forum is grateful to have an opportunity like this to share information with our community. As the local watershed group, it's just incredibly important for us to do all we can to steward water resources, whether that's the direct on the ground restoration we do ourselves, working with partners and stakeholders on bigger picture issues, and really connecting people to resources, youth and adults. We do a lot in schools, but we really enjoy this too, having a chance to talk with community members about water issues facing all of us. So thank you for participating in this. If you have questions, never hesitate to reach out. And if there are other web resources you'd like to see on our website, please let us know and we can add those to the tab. And thanks again, everyone, for your participation today. We really appreciate it.